This guy was reborn as a paladin. In a world consumed by war, Eden possessed the system of the sun god, where he could complete missions and receive the blessing of the sun. As a paladin, his first mission in Vachexar was to make the nobles jealous with the solar sword, which means he must destroy all of his enemies in this world. Flying over the village, crows announced the arrival of a very dark night. Walking through the streets, a mysterious woman moves towards a house. Just then, a man watches her and says she did exactly as ordered. Hovering in the air, she replies that he has finally come to the right place. Then, a mysterious voice observes everything up close and calls her pretty thing. The scene changes as villagers scream in despair upon seeing a body in the well. Staring at the corpse, one of them shouts that the demon has attacked the village again. The villagers gather anxiously around a large bonfire. Approaching the chief, a villager says he's scared to death of the situation. Asking him to wait, the chief announces that the paladin will arrive very soon. He then assures them that with his arrival, the problem will finally be solved. After all, a powerful being with the power of a god is coming to help. Hearing this, the villagers celebrate, shouting that they are all saved now. But suddenly, one of the men looks to the side with a frightened expression. Seeing the hooded figure, the villagers wonder if the paladin has finally arrived. As they study the newcomer, they question whether he is the paladin or a hunter. Stepping forward, the village chief asks directly who he is. Explaining they are waiting for someone else, the chief dismisses him, but he replies that he is the paladin. Removing his hood, the young man surprises everyone, who ask if he is really the paladin. Introducing himself as Eden, he announces he is the apprentice sent to exterminate demons. Whispering among themselves, the villagers doubt that an apprentice can resolve the situation. Disappointed by the revelation, the chief repeats that he is just a simple apprentice. Before the bonfire, the young paladin faces the village chief in silence. Gathered in the distance, the villagers comment that their village is completely doomed. Near the fire, the paladin comments to the chief that the damage seems considerable. The chief replies that yes, dozens of women have been killed. He continues, explaining that they were all found withered and completely twisted. Observing the scene, the chief comments that the paladin would be horrified by the bodies. At that moment, a demon reveals he was looking for a specific type of energy. Hearing the comment, he says the chief shouldn't have said that so easily. Turning to the man, he admits he knows he might have seemed rude, but he states that he understands the chief's concern and says this isn't common. With great determination, he announces he will begin the exorcism right away. At that, he shouts for them to gather all the girls of the same age group. After all the women are gathered, he stands before the frightened group. Taking one last look, he confirms that everyone he asked for is there. Seeing the fear in the girl's eyes, he concentrates to begin the ritual. Then, with a focused gaze, he says it's time for them to begin. As he extends his hand, one of the women is startled by the sight of something golden. Engulfed in the energy, a man asks if that is the sacred power of the paladins. Then he walks toward one of the girls, his hand still extended. Placing his hand on her forehead, he begins to use his power on the woman. As the energy surrounds the girl, the others watch on with apprehension. Completely still, the woman shows no reaction to the paladin's touch. Focused on the girl, he says he has finally found what he was looking for. Revealing the possession, he yells for everyone to restrain the woman immediately. Frightened, the villagers wonder if the demon really possessed that girl. As they move to restrain her, a boy runs up, screaming desperately for them to stop. Running, he shouts that she is his sister and that she was at home. Pleading, the boy begs them not to burn her, as they are a small family. As he's held back, he screams for them to stop pushing him like that. Grabbing the boy, a man says the demon must be eliminated quickly, but the paladin intervenes, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder and asking him to wait. Looking at the boy, he calmly states that he doesn't burn people. He then explains they were to hold her so he could find the demon's location. Just then, the demon manifests and shouts that humans are too noisy. Seeing this, one of the villagers turns and asks who that being is. Shocked, he realizes that the real demon is the chief of their very own village. The woman then screams that the demon has awakened and will tear out their souls. Watching the scene in terror, the boy calls out to his sister, unable to believe it. Deducing it's a demonic name, the paladin understands the negation of divine power. Without wasting any more time, he prepares his sword for the coming fight. Drawing his sword, he warns that the demon will soon possess her completely. Moving the blade, he releases a great power that was stored in the object. He then gathers all his strength, concentrating for the next move. At that, the sword releases a flash of power toward the poor girl. Pointing the weapon, he positions it very close to the possessed woman's chest. Suddenly, the girl seems to come to her senses, not understanding what is happening. Seeing her reaction, he asks if she's awake and tells her not to worry. He then assures her that his sword is only for evil, and will not harm her. Crying, the girl asks in despair what she has done, but he comforts her, saying it was the demon's fault and they need to kill it. Right after, he asks where the place the demon had designated is. Arriving in front of a brewery, he questions if this was the place she mentioned. Riding under the full moon, he gets closer and closer to the brewery. Meanwhile, a mysterious woman watches him from one of the windows. With a smile, the figure prepares to make a move against the paladin. Pulling on the reins, the paladin brings his horse to a sudden and unexpected halt. Annoyed, he tells her to stop this nonsense. Shouting, he questions how she dares to lure him away from his goal, but she offers to go out with him for a while if that's what he wants. Ignoring the offer, he orders his horse to take him the other way. Then, the horse starts running at high speed, kicking up a lot of dust. Moving away, he rides quickly through the dark forest, far from that place. Arriving at the location, an incubus complains that the one he wants didn't come. Introducing himself as Sebastian, he says he's just shortening the list of names. Just then, another demon says he's just making a fool of himself with demons. Hearing the taunt, Sebastian stares at the other demon with a very surprised expression. Gaining momentum, he rushes towards his new and unexpected target. Seeing the demon, he asks why it's running like that. Advancing with his sword, he prepares to strike the demon with force. With a devastating blow, his sword comes down hard on the enemy. The ground trembles from the force of the sword's impact. Causing an explosion, the attack hits its moving target head-on. Thrown back, the demon is hurled into the air by the force of the blow. Falling violently, the demon smashes onto the ground, but it regenerates, and the paladin says this power excites him. Then the demon screams, saying the paladin is making him very angry. With a furious look, he shouts and threatens the young and powerful paladin. Promising a painful death, the demon charges forward to attack with everything it has. Holding his sword, he says the demon talks too much. Putting a stop to it, he prepares to use a new skill. Extending his hand, he begins to use a completely new and different power. Hit! The demon screams desperately as it's enveloped by an energy. Feeling the power, the demon curses him, calling him a hound of the divine order. With a smile, he questions if he's just a hound of that so-called order. Grabbing the demon, the paladin says he's actually much worse than that. Asking if it had its fun, the paladin squeezes the demon's neck tightly. He then denies the request, saying it wouldn't be fun to torture a demon. Back in the village, the chief is amazed by the paladin's healing power. Explaining it's temporary, the boy asks about his dear sister's condition. Handing him a vial, he tells him to give it to her, and the boy recognizes it as holy water. Thanking him, the paladin says she'll be fine after a few days of sleep. Seeing him leave, the village chief calls out desperately for the great paladin. Kneeling, the man begs with all his might for him to save them from the demon. In the midst of darkness, even a small source of light is very precious. At that, other villagers join in the plea, promising to pray for him every day. Hearing their pleas, he faces the villagers, who beg him to save them from the demon. Seeing the Platinum Knight, the villagers bow before the eradicator of evil. Asking them not to bow, he says he will do his part as a human. Leaving, he leaves behind the villagers, who see him as the light in the night. Moving away from the village, he continues on his path, being what the world calls a paladin. Back in the forest, he tightens his grip on the suffocating demon's neck. Revealing his plan, he says he didn't give her holy water but a sleeping potion. Stepping on the demon, he decides to kill it before the girl wakes up. Just then, a voice says the paladin's real name is Yujite. Displaying his stats, his ability reveals the power of noble divine hypocrisy. Recalling the past, he notes that the villagers are quite naive. After all, he was reincarnated into the game 2 years ago and no longer believes in any god. Shocked, the demon asks how he can wield divine power without believing in the gods. Staring at the fallen enemy, the paladin remains silent for a brief moment. Dismissing the question, he just curses the demon for its persistence. Then, one of his traits reveals he gets stronger by killing demons. Saying the demon talks too much, he then lands a powerful blow that smashes its face into the ground. On impact, the demon's skull shatters completely, ending the fight. Remembering a story, he recalls a world ruled by the ancient gods. Back then, days of peace were shattered by the sudden arrival of the demons. Then, Vachiksar, the sun god, single-handedly faced the great evil that appeared. After his great victory, mankind began to worship only the mighty sun god. Thus, the humans who served him used their powers to defeat the demons. This is revealed to be the game's backstory, which is how he got his powers. Switching to a memory, a mother screams for her son as he's attacked by a demon. Amidst the flames, several people are burned alive, screaming for help. Wide-eyed, he wonders why he's in this place. Seeing the fiery scene, he questions why he's inside the game. Struck by a blow, he screams as he's violently thrown back. Crashing to the ground, he keeps screaming from the pain. Crawling, he says all of this has been frighteningly familiar to him since the launch. Facing a monster, he remembers the game is known for its difficulty. Looking up, he screams in despair that it's a huge minotaur. The creature then attacks Eden, a testament to why no one has ever beaten the game. With a single swing, the monster's weapon strikes Eden with immense force. Lying on the ground, Eden groans in pain from his severe injuries. Spitting blood, he screams in agony while staring at the ceiling. Sitting up, he says the pain is real and that it all hurts so much. Elsewhere, he hears men praying, asking a god to save them. Looking on in confusion, he sees them all begging the sun god to drive away the evil. Seeing the others just standing there, he asks why they don't just run away. In great pain, he struggles with all his might to get up from the floor. Facing the creatures, he despairs, wondering why there are so many monsters. Looking at a woman, he desperately yells for her to run away as fast as she can. He then begs her to stop praying and run for her life. In disbelief, he wonders aloud if he's really going to die like this. Just then, he sees a man lying on the ground next to an abandoned sword. Extending his hand, he asks if they're really just going to ignore him. Grabbing the weapon, he says he'll use his own hands to defend them while they pray. Feeling a surge of power, he's stunned and questions if this can even be real. Turning, he finds a status window appearing right in front of him. The window then shows that his power is that of noble and pure hypocrisy. Seeing the ability, he notes it's a unique skill he's never seen in the game before. Feeling stronger, he announces that he can finally take care of that monster. Preparing his strike, he raises the sword to attack with all his might. Leaping into the attack, he yells for the monster to die and cuts it in half. Looking at his hand, he's amazed at how easy it was because of the power. Suddenly, the Minotaur's eyes lock onto him. Realizing the danger, he looks on in fear as the monster notices him. The creature then roars, and he wonders why it's attacking him now. Taking a direct hit, he's crushed by the massive Minotaur's powerful blow. The impact sends his body flying backward with incredible force and violence. Getting up slowly, he seems confused by something he's just noticed. Touching his body, he says it didn't hurt, and wonders if it was the divine power. Gripping the sword, he realizes he can kill the demons with his new power. Complaining about the delay, he asks when they intended to enter. Inside a large hall, he positions himself in front of her. He then introduces himself as the apprentice who captured the demon. He then forcefully throws the chained prisoner to the ground. She then questions why he brought the man back alive. Then she orders the guards to kill the one who brought him. Lying on the ground, the chained prisoner then asks who she is. Seeing the confusion, he states that she doesn't know what she's talking about. Suddenly, she kicks his face and screams that she should have killed him. Turning to the apprentice, she screams that he is incompetent. With another stomp, the prisoner's head is finally crushed. After the execution, the apprentice stands still, covered in blood. Before her, the man's body now lies on the floor. But he explains that the Baron ordered the capture so he could vent his anger. He claims the demon never saw her, questioning why she calls herself a victim. Furious at his words, she quickly moves forward and slaps him. Unfazed, he asks how she dares speak against him that way. Screaming, she says he should just obey and be submissive to her. She then raises her hand once more to try and hit him again, but he catches her wrist in midair, stopping the second attack. Just then, a nobleman arrives and asks how he dares to touch a noblewoman. Drawing his sword, the man prepares to attack the apprentice immediately. Calmly, he faces the nobleman and advises him to use his brain better. Introducing himself, he asks if the nobleman wants the order as his enemy. With a grunt, the older man seems to back down from the threat. Turning away, she calls two of her maids to her side in the hall. To vent her anger, she slaps the first one hard across the face. Next, she strikes the second maid with the back of her hand. Seeing all this, he wonders what is happening in this place. Holding the maid, she asks if he has a problem with it. Screaming, she tells him to get rid of that disgusting demon. With a clenched fist, he states that she is hiding something. Standing before the body, he says he can't kill someone like that, but he explains that killing the demon so easily would set a bad example. Lying on the ground, the demon just lifts his head and watches everything. Without any warning, he strikes the prisoner hard on the back. Feeling the blow, he asks if the apprentice will get away with this. Striking him, he tells the demon to shut his mouth immediately. With his sword in hand, he says that the only reason for his death is because he dared to touch Eleanor, who was present. But the demon screams that it's a lie and that he never got near her. Seeing the confusion, the nobleman tells her it's better to go inside. Caught off guard by the denial, he falls silent for a moment. Lying down, he points and gets the attention of the human who was there. Screaming, the demon asks why she's acting like she doesn't know him. He then questions if it was all a trick to sacrifice the village. Accusing her of being the real demon, he says she deceived him. Understanding the situation, he finally realizes what is happening. With a swift swing of his sword, he decapitates the demon on the ground. Blocking their exit, he asks where they are going in such a hurry. He then explains that he can't simply ignore the demon's last words. Outraged, she questions how he dares to believe a demon over her. She then yells, demanding he present a good reason for the investigation. Mentioning the bodies outside, he says they were the punished scouts. Facing the two of them, he prepares his argument to expose the whole truth. He claims that one of the scouts is still alive. Noticing her affection, while she demands proof, he says he has another hunch about it. Explaining the demon's nature, he says it was an energy incubus. Finishing his reasoning, he says its victims always die in agony, but he points out that she is perfectly fine, unlike the other victims. He then reveals that the demon appeared out of nowhere in that village. Recalling the case, he says it was as if someone had summoned it. Facing the nobleman, he asks if the man knows what that means. Moving forward, he says he can smell the scout right beside him. He then stops abruptly right in front of the nobleman and stares at him. Sensing the smell, he identifies it as the same one he smelled upon arrival. Then he yells that this is the stench of a disgusting demon. His hand begins to release energy as he focuses his gaze. Changing scenes, a maid is shown dead on a bedroom floor. Beside the body, the nobleman and Eleanor observe the result of their actions. Hearing a scream, they wonder what happened and run towards it. Carrying her, he asks how they will fix the situation they created. He then says that the blame for all that disturbance was on a demon, so he concludes that if there is a real demon, everything will be real. Recalling their conversation, she challenges him to prove his love by summoning a demon. Promising he would become the heir, she convinces him to perform the summoning. Back in the present, he says his divine power will reveal the magic used. As the energy hits him, several potion vials are revealed on him. Just then, an inquisitor arrives and shows the fake holy water from her quarters. He reveals that the nobleman used the vials to suppress his magic the whole time. Desperate, he screams that they are mistaken, and there's a reason for everything. Taking him elsewhere, Eden asks for the reason behind the situation. In silence, he awaits the man's answer without looking away. In a flashback, the nobleman asks if Eden wants him to investigate the entourage. Agreeing with the idea, Eden asks for the investigation to be done quickly. Zarath then says he will look for evidence, asking him to distract Eleanor. Back in the present, a figure is seen being covered by an energy. Zarath then explains that suppressing that demonic energy is a great blasphemy. Seeing the scene, Eleanor screams desperately, not knowing what to do. Saying she is also responsible, he turns and faces the noblewoman, but he admits there is no evidence directly connecting her to the demon. However, he recalls that a paladin's word is considered the absolute truth. Trying to defend herself, she screams that she knows nothing and blames the man, but he reveals he was threatened with death to remain completely silent. She then screams that she couldn't do anything and calls him a bastard. Gritting his teeth, he yells that she can die right there. In a fit of rage, he lunges forward and throws her violently to the ground. Fallen, she looks up, completely terrified by the unfolding situation. He then asks how she could abandon him after everything he did. Desperate, she screams for him to stay away at all costs. In seconds, his body dissolves into particles in front of everyone. Surprised by what happened, he wonders what is going on. Just then, an older man enters the hall and surveys the scene. Worried, he asks aloud if his daughter is safe. Seeing the Baron, the Inquisitor comments on his surprise at the situation. Extending a hand, Eden helps the woman up from the floor. The Inquisitor tells the Baron he will remain silent out of friendship, but he warns that he will not tolerate it a second time. Standing beside him, she says this is a big problem. He explains that purification must be fair and applies to everyone. Facing the noblewoman, he tells her to consider herself lucky. She then formally thanks the Order for taking care of the demon. Announcing he's going to rest, he says she has escaped judgment for now, but he warns that rumors of the scandal will reach the Baron, and that this will mean the complete end of her reputation. But a voice interrupts him, asking him to wait a moment. Approaching him, a man asks if he is the famous Eden. Introducing himself, the man says he is Bishop Farrell of the local diocese. Watching the bishop talk with the Baron, he just observes the scene. Formally, he says that he is also honored to meet the bishop. Apologizing, he says he rushed over to ask a small favor. He asks for an abbreviated ceremony, so Eden asks what happened. The bishop then begins to explain that a group of worshippers has been discovered. Confirming it's a cult, he warns that they are very powerful. Therefore, the Inquisitor says they must use their full strength now. He asks Eden for help, since the other paladins of the Order cannot. Then the bishop asks to appoint him as a paladin to hunt the traitors of the gods. He mentions the disappearance of the children, blaming the disgusting demonic cult for the act. With a smile on his face, he simply replies that he understands the situation. The revelation is that Farrell is a pedophile, a definite enemy in the game. At this, he accuses him of trying to intercept the children on their way. Kneeling, he says that the will of the Order is the will of God. He then replies that he accepts the opportunity and will gladly join. Beginning the ceremony, the bishop calls him a child blessed by the gods. He continues the speech, saying the boy wants to become his sword. With the sword, he declares him a paladin with the right of final judgment. Changing scenes, a voice in a room calls him Lord Eden. Putting on the new armor, he thinks it's a bit too exaggerated, but a young servant says he looks great and that it's a symbol. Introducing himself as Yuan, he claims to be Lord Eden's temporary servant, saying it's an honor. He bows, but Eden doesn't respond. In a flashback, the bishop says that paladins need a temporary servant, but he notes that the recruit is weak, unlike the Order's elite. Riding with his troops, he realizes they are too weak for the mission. Instead of the best mages, he received only a band of common knights. This way, the children can be intercepted, just as Pharrell wanted from the beginning. Choosing a strong cult location, he prepared a trap for everyone. Riding beside him, Xerath asks why he doesn't seem happy. He then laughs and says he has a question for the paladin. Then, he asks where Xerath has been traveling alone for so long. Pointing to his dirty clothes, he says they smell much worse. Explaining his discovery, he says his senses are no longer human. Asking if he's noticed anything, Xerath says he considers him very obsessive. Saying that everything is strange, he reveals he went to investigate the place beforehand. Arriving there, he sensed the magic and left it alone so they wouldn't be noticed. He mentions visiting the cemetery and finding something very interesting there. Stopping, Eden asks what he found at the site. Xerath reveals he saw open graves with clear traces of necromantic magic. Slightly ashamed, he admits he wasn't able to dispel it. Eden concludes their opponent's level must be insanely high. He says it could be a preparation or a trap set up in advance. So he says they can either report it or simply walk into the trap. But Xerath states he'd rather act and see things with his own eyes. Under the full moon, the group finally made the decision to advance. Arriving at the cemetery, they begin to investigate the area for clues. Xerath warns that the magic has worsened, creating a perfect environment for possession. Accompanied by the knights, they look around with great attention and care. Seeing the knights, Yuan asks what they should do now, but Eden replies directly that he doesn't need to do anything at all. Suddenly, he notices something, and his expression changes completely. In an instant, everyone freezes, sensing danger, and Eden shouts for everyone to prepare for an attack. Just then, an undead hand emerges from the earth right in front of them. Several bodies then begin to rise violently from the graves. One of the undead rises completely and lets out a loud scream. Seeing the horde, he yells to everyone that the undead are attacking. Realizing it's a trap, he sees a good opportunity to gain experience. Wielding his sword, he prepares to fight the undead. With a focused gaze, he concentrates fully on the coming battle. Then he moves forward and swings his sword at the horde of enemies. Shouting for them to take the hit, he unleashes a powerful blast of energy. On impact, the monsters on the front line are hit head-on. Seeing this, Xerath says he'll be able to cast his spells with ease. He then prepares his magic and shouts that he's going to clean up this whole mess. The magic strikes the undead, startling the soldiers watching. Struck by the light, the enemy's bodies begin to disintegrate. In agony, one of the undead screams as it is consumed by the power. Several of the monsters then explode simultaneously from the cast spell. Xerath explains he didn't break the spell earlier, so that more monsters would appear. In front of the soldiers, he says he was at least prepared for the situation. Seeing his attitude, Eden remembers that Xerath was an enemy in the game. He feels lucky to have him as an ally, as he would be difficult to defeat. Then he warns that they now need to find the nearby necromancer. In the middle of the cemetery, a figure says they weren't half bad. Challenging the two, the figure asks if they want to see what he's capable of. Shouting to Lord Eden, Yuan points in the direction of the new threat. Before them, the cemetery ground begins to glow strangely. From the ground, a new horde of even stronger undead appears. Xerath then warns him to be careful, as he is not a god, but he tells Xerath to focus on the attack, as he will hunt down the necromancer. Turning his gaze, he observes the frozen reaction of the young recruits. Completely paralyzed, the rookie knights just watch as the monsters get closer. Drawing his sword, he orders the young men to stay back and just wait. But Xerath interrupts, saying he can't keep fighting alone like this. He then advises him to give them a chance, since no one starts out as a veteran. Gripping the hilt of his sword tightly, he prepares for his next move. Silent for a moment, he stares at the young recruit in front of him. Shouting, he warns that he won't be able to protect anyone once the battle truly begins. But the recruit replies that he will fight with all his might, even if it costs him his life. Seeing that strong determination, he looks at the young man for a brief moment. Gripping his sword, he accepts the young man's determination for the great battle. Raising his sword, he yells about the heretic he despises being there. Then he orders them to form a pentagon formation with himself at the point. As he asks them to hold the formation, the recruits shout that they will carry out the divine will. Leaping into the air, he charges forward with two others against the undead. He then explains that the recruits will fight using the holy power he has lent them. With a swift motion, A wave of energy is released toward all the monsters. He says they can't manifest the power on their own, but they can still fight. Being next to a paladin, they should be able to fight very well. One of the recruits charges forward and successfully lands a blow on an enemy. In the background, Xerath concentrates and begins to prepare a new attack spell. With the spell, a large explosion erupts in the middle of the battlefield. Watching the fight, he notes that Xerath and the recruits are doing their part, but he also senses that the magic in the area is growing fouler. Believing in victory, he says they just need to get through to reach the necromancer. With a strike, he declares that if they catch him, it will all finally be over. Suddenly, he senses a new enemy approaching and goes on alert. From the shadows, a mysterious masked figure appears before them all. He quickly turns and shouts for everyone to be extremely careful now. In a surprise attack, the figure strikes down several soldiers in succession. Before them all, the enemy reveals himself to be a great dark knight. Pushed back, he wonders if this is the most powerful undead here. At that moment, Yuan desperately screams that they are in serious trouble. From a distance, the necromancer says everyone seems to be having a lot of fun. With a focused gaze, he prepares to counterattack the knight. Then the necromancer says his knight has recognized him as a great foe. He reveals his knight was eager to fight from the very beginning, but with a smile, he says he must leave as he has other matters to attend to. Watching the scene, he realizes he's never seen that necromancer anywhere before. He then wonders if this is because of the game's difficulty. Looking at the horde, he sees his soldiers are struggling to advance. Gritting his teeth, he's annoyed by such a strong enemy so early on. A great blue energy begins to be released throughout the area. Worried, Xerath asks if he's okay and if he can handle it all. Confidently, Eden says yes and tells him to leave the enemy to him. Xerath then tells him to attack the core and to stay alive. But the recruits tell him to take care of the horde, saying they will help. Eden tells them to just try not to die in the great battle to come. He warns that the knight regenerates infinitely as long as its core is intact. Facing his opponent, he shouts that he will find and destroy its core. He swings his sword down, launching the first attack. Then he lunges forward, his blade a swift and precise motion. Struck by the blow, the enemy stumbles back a few steps, completely off balance. Facing the monster, he readies himself for the next move in the battle. With a quick reflex, he strikes several times, but it has no effect. Forced to his knees, he wonders where he should strike next. After finding an opening, he raises his sword for a final blow. As he attacks, he realizes the opponent is defending its head, and he must wait. Tightening his grip on the sword's hilt, he prepares for his chance. Finding the perfect opportunity, he decides now is the time to strike. His blow hits the opponent's neck in a single, precise move. As it falls to the ground, the enemy's head begins to crumble into pieces. On his knees, he wonders if the long battle is finally over. Suddenly, his eyes widen as he realizes something isn't right. All at once, the enemy's body explodes violently under the moonlight. Thrown back, he's dragged away by the immense force of the blast. Seeing his cracked armor, he says his organs would have been destroyed. He complains, saying he thought the head was the weak spot. Just then, the enemy regenerates, and he questions the monster's defense. Resting on his knees, he prepares to get up and continue. He then deduces that if the enemy blocked it, that spot must be important. In a vision, a strange metal structure appears in his mind. Realizing the truth, he says it can't possibly be that. He then charges and attacks. Taking critical damage, the enemy screams desperately for the first time. With a smirk on his face, he reveals the tongue was its weakness. He seizes the chance and keeps forcing his sword against the target. Parrying the counterattack, he says he can't hit it directly. He then decides to cut the enemy's legs to throw it off balance. With a precise move, he hits the monster's leg and celebrates his success. Seeing the enemy standing still, he concludes he now just needs to destroy its core. Clenching his fist, he prepares to put his bold plan into action. He then pulls out a dagger, shouting that he's going to pierce its liver. Removing the dagger from its chest, he stares at the result. Upon receiving the victory notification, he finally declares it's all over. The scene changes. A man says the other has chosen death for his blasphemy. To this, the hooded figure replies that his god is another, and he is devoted to him. Surprised, the two men sense a presence approaching them. Looking back, the man wonders if he's hallucinating. He then asks how the warrior got there, and if he defeated the knight. Confirming the question, the warrior says it was a very difficult battle. He comments that the recruits must have fought, but he's afraid he won't find anything left. He laments that he has no one stronger than the defeated Black Knight. Questioning the man's desire for a body, the leader warns that he has questions. Turning aside, the hooded figure asks what makes them think he would answer. Taking a step forward, he asks for his master to absorb him now. He then offers his soul, and his body is pulled upwards rapidly. At that moment, the ground shakes, surprising the group watching the whole situation unfold. Worried, the man says this isn't good, and that everything gets worse without him. Under the moon, the warrior prepares a powerful attack with his enormous weapon. Spinning his body, he hurls the weapon with force towards the distant group. The weapon flies through the sky, crossing the battlefield at high speed. Struck in the chest by the blow, the man screams desperately, feeling the direct impact. The leader asks if he's biblical, but the other tells them to find the bishop. Saying he'll meet them later, the warrior starts running towards the cliff. He then jumps off the cliff, yelling that they'll meet again later on the path. Watching the scene, the leader just sighs, lamenting that the warrior is already gone. Smiling, the leader says they need to go, and his companion agrees immediately. Reaching the ground, the impact of the fall kicks up dust and a lot of debris. Using his sword to break his fall, he lands safely after jumping from the cliff. Plummeting towards his target, he finds the bishop there with a wounded hostage. The bishop says he can't believe the skills he's seeing. The more he sees, the more he desires them. He reveals that, according to their deal, he could have the best knight in exchange for him. With an irritated look, he understands that Pharrell had a deal with the enemy. Carrying the hostage, he wonders if the location for the sacrifice has changed. Placing the man on his shoulder, he starts running away from the danger. Seeing the village in flames, he says they need to find out what happened quickly. Jumping towards the fire, he goes to investigate the village's destruction up close. From above, the entire village appears completely destroyed by the flames of the recent attack. Running through the fire, he laments that one of the neighboring villages has been wiped out. Leaning on the survivor, the wounded man desperately begs for help for everyone. Looking to the side, his expression reveals the horror of the situation around him. Seeing the people begging for help, he faces the survivors screaming for aid. Trapped in the fire, the children cry and beg for someone to help them. With a smile, Xerath says that isn't a good idea. Standing before the bonfire, they watch the trapped children and the bodies on the ground. Then Xerath asks if they aren't a little late. With a malicious smile, Xerath stares at the group with a look of utter contempt. In a panic, he remembers that in the game, Xerath also burns humans without hesitation. Seeing him run into the flames, the man says he's gone completely insane. With his back to the danger, he stands motionless before the spreading fire. Reflecting on his past, he admits he was never truly a good person. His good deeds were just to raise his stats and survive longer. In a world ruled by strength, he didn't want to be oppressed by those around him. That's why he acted like a good person, and he wonders if he should continue. The scene changes. A woman comments on an utterly ridiculous life force. Hearing the voice, he turns his head towards her and remains silent. Inside a room, he stares at the seated girl who is watching him intently. She then bows and formally calls him by the name of Lord Eden. Asking if he's awake, he recognizes her as the saint, Uriel of the Order. He wants to know where they're going, and she informs him they are heading to the Order. After her reply, he falls quiet with a look of astonishment on his face. Suddenly getting out of bed, the girl on the floor asks him to be careful. Desperate, he asks about Xerath and what the hell is happening with the children. Questioning her about the children in the forest, she warns him that he's being rude. With a hand on his head, he apologizes for his haste and calls her saint. She says the children are safe, and he was spared because she was passing by. Not understanding, he asks if it's true that nothing happened to the children. Confirming the story, she says that this time, he changed his terrible decision. He wonders what happened, as this never occurred in the game before. Realizing Uriel knows no more, he decides to better analyze the current situation. Seeing the Marquise's flag, he notices she isn't a saint yet. He then asks if the others went to the Order, and she tells him to rest. From this, he deduces they are heading to Uriel's sainthood ceremony. Remembering the game, he knows this is where an important event might happen. He warns her that a group pretending to be superiors will contact her. Confused, she asks what he's talking about, but he says he's repaying a favor. Trying to stop him, she yells for him to wait, but he has already jumped out. Jumping into the middle of the forest, he manages to land safely on the ground. He then says he warned her, as it would be difficult without her around. Heading towards the Order, a knight approaches and calls him Lord Eden. Saying he saw him jump, the knight explains he came to escort him. Surprised, he realizes that Yuan, his old companion, is actually alive here. Yuan tells him to hurry, and he thinks the young man will be useful. Picking up the pace, the horses gallop together down the dirt road. Riding side by side, the knight says he's quite surprised by everything. He apologizes and confesses that, to be honest, he thought he was dead. Yuan explains that he was seen being swallowed by the flames, and he questions it. He remembers that Xerath's power never fades after being activated. With a serious face, he tells the knight he'd like to hear more. Yuan recounts that the flames on his body simply vanished in an instant. Shocked, he doesn't understand how Xerath's power vanished, unlike in the original story. Showing an envelope, Yuan says he was sent to deliver a card from Zirath. The scene changes to Zirath's residence in the prosperous kingdom of Arheim. Sitting in his armchair, he remains silent, waiting for a long moment. Closing his eyes, he begins to remember a dark moment from his past. In a flashback, he promises he would give anything for his dark god. He then attacks the older man, driving the dagger into his body several times. Just then, his older brother appears, and the boy calls him brother. Frightened, the brother asks if he should send him to their mother, and he is notified of an arrival. With his eyes closed, he simply says he understood the guard's message. Seeing him enter, he says the Lord arrived earlier and asks him to follow. Without a word, the warrior stares at the man with a very serious expression. He explains he's not sociable, and that's why he didn't want to stay in a prosperous country. Stopping at the door, he says, being there makes him feel as if his faith is being denied. Going down the stairs, he confesses he is struggling between faith and practicality. Arriving in the basement, they find the place empty with only bloodstains. He reveals that the bishop joined the heretic and traded him for the children. He questions how a paladin was appointed and became a dark knight. Seeing how things ended, he says that now they need to make a choice. Then he reveals that an unexpected name came from Pharrell's mouth, Archbishop Tigane. Surprised, he knows that Tigane is a moderate, and the accusation will strengthen the radicals. Saying that war is about to begin, he directly asks what the warrior will do. He explains that he needs to verify the accusation before reporting it to avoid a war. Then he asks what the warrior would do if he reported it for an investigation. Warning that the land is infested, he vows to stop him even if it means fighting. Laughing at the response, he comments that the warrior truly doesn't hesitate to act. He says this is the difference between them, and then touches Eden. Receiving a surprise attack, he suddenly feels a strong impact on his chest. Then Zirath reveals that God extinguished his flames when he hesitated to save everyone. He laments having disappointed his God, saying he won't get a second chance. Asking to be guided to God's side, he says he can't decide. He asks for forgiveness for postponing his decisions, and the warrior replies that he doesn't care, saying this is the path for everyone. His eye reflects the strange light. Looking at his hands, he suddenly realizes the power is now with him. As this happens, Zirath watches the scene with a satisfied smile. With the power in his hands, Eden hears that it seems God has finally chosen him. Screaming for it to stop, the prisoners beg for help, saying they don't want to die. With a firm stance, he positions himself beside his master. Zirath then declares that from now on, all that power is his. Faced with this revelation, Eden's eyes widen in disbelief at what's happening. Supporting the warrior, his master asks if he's feeling all right. He says the power is dangerous, but the warrior doesn't understand the power he has received. Worried, he asks if his master is okay, since it was his main ability. His master says that he simply deserved the power, and that's why he's fine. Offering his hand, his master says he'll be happy if he uses the power. He says that burning innocence is not an option, and the master approves of his conviction. Denying he has a sense of justice, he claims he just knows what needs to be done. He says they need to speak with the archbishop about his connection to the demon. The master then informs him he must wait for the saint's book dedication. Apologizing, he says he needs to rest, and the master arranges the meeting. Turning to the door, he calls out for Yuan, asking if he's around. Appearing at the top of the stairs, Yuan is called by the master for a private conversation. Telling the warrior to rest, the master says that he and Yuan are leaving. Watching the two of them leave, he just thinks that he'll wait for their return. A few days later, the actions of the apostate and Pharrell were finally revealed to the public. In a large meeting room, the council gathers to begin analyzing the case. With the council convinced by the evidence, it became impossible to cover up the ensuing scandal. In the basement of the bishop's residence, dozens of children were found in a terrible state. The church then decided it would protect and treat all the surviving children at the monastery. While investigating the heresy case, the task force found few irregularities among the other priests. He reveals that Pharrell enjoyed murdering parents in front of their own children. Worried, he tells his master that the blue flame doesn't seem to ignite at his will. The master explains that the flame burns with conviction and that his is different. He laments receiving the greatest power and not being able to use it to get through the game. Looking aside, he decides that from now on, he can't depend on this power. Saying it will be difficult, the master advises that he'll have to learn through practice. Looking out into the courtyard, he sees Yuan training with his sword and is confused. His master then asks if he's never seen it, explaining that Yuan trains there every day. After Yuan complained, he recommended some exercises so he could be more helpful. Breathing heavily, the master asks if he isn't trying hard enough in his training. Simply agreeing, he realizes that in that moment, all eyes were on him. Moving to the temple, a nobleman greets him and mentions his great reputation in the rumors. Surrounded by a group, he comments that he's receiving a lot of attention for his recent achievements. From a distance, two men are talking, saying he didn't seem like much on paper. One of them says the reputation is exaggerated and that he's going to talk to him personally. Approaching the group, the man offers his hand, saying it's a pleasure to meet him. He then congratulates him for passing the test in 2 years, if it's true. Saying he's never heard of him, the man says the warrior lacks experience. Then the man extends his hand and greets him in a very strange way. Squeezing with great force, the man tries to demonstrate superiority with his handshake. He then warns that one day the warrior will hear about the legend of the manta bird. He smiles and says that rumors are just rumors, but facts are facts. Looking him in the eyes, he questions what the point of spreading a rumor is. Just then, the man's hand cracks, and he immediately starts screaming in pain. Startled, he wonders what kind of handshake that was. Released violently, he is thrown hard and falls to the hall floor. On his knees, the man says that power is far beyond that of a simple paladin. At that moment, a voice approaches and calls him by the name of Lord Eden. Coming up from behind, a woman says he's finally in the right place. Turning his head to look, he comes face to face with the young woman who called him. The woman reveals herself as Uriel, and the fallen man shouts her name. Bowing, she formally thanks him because his advice saved her life. He realizes his father promised a large compensation for the great and important favor. In front of everyone, he says he won't accept the reward, as it was God who saved her. With a smile on her face, she just asks if that's really the case. She then asks to speak with him in private before the book's dedication. In the back of the temple, she asks if it was God's will for him to jump into the flames. He replies that it was his own will, since with no one else around, there's no reason to lie. She then questions why he took the risk, assuming he knows about the flame. He says it was for her good, a phrase she finds ambiguous, but she rewards his devotion nonetheless. She asks him to take her hand, and he asks if he's going to receive a blessing. Knowing that the blessing increases one's stats, he takes her hand without hesitation. Beginning the ritual, she says that the agent of judgment has fulfilled his important duties. Asking if he will always be faithful to his God, he answers yes without hesitation. She continues, asking if he will spread the teachings and lead the necessary destruction. Finally, she asks if he will always be devoted to God in all his ways. He confirms that he will, but she immediately realizes that lies don't work on Uriel. With her power of perception, she stares at him and wonders if that was a lie. Surprised by this discovery, she asks what Lord Eden truly is. Just then, the door opens, and they announce that Archbishop Tegan is entering. Pulling her aside, he says they'll talk later and quickly leaves the temple. Having received the blessing, he gives his thanks and says he will use the new power well. Placing a hand on her chest, she laments, saying that this can't happen again. In disbelief at his stats, she wonders how a paladin can have so much power. Watching him walk away, she concludes that the man doesn't truly believe in God. Running through the halls, he hurries to find the archbishop as quickly as possible. Asking where the archbishop is, his companion points out that he's just ahead. Approaching the group, he knows that a person's character doesn't usually change easily. He then approaches Tegan, who has always been a man faithful to the church until now. Kneeling before the leader, he is formally introduced as the Paladin Eden to the Archbishop. Then Archbishop Tegan calls him a hero, asking about his great contribution in the incident. Saying it was thanks to the church, the Archbishop replies that the church did nothing for him. He realizes there is no hesitation or fabrication in the words of the man before him. After the investiture, the Archbishop invites him for a private cup of tea. Accepting the invitation, he says he will go to the office after the investiture ceremony. Being from the sacred tribe, the Archbishop says he looks forward to hearing the hero's legends. The Archbishop confirms they will meet after the ceremony. Suddenly, his companion informs him that he will not be able to attend the investiture ceremony. From a distance, Uriel watches the interaction between the two with a stern and serious expression. Turning to the frightened young man, he asks what Euron just said to him. Moving away from the group of clerics, he proceeds alone down the grand hallway. Walking down the kingdom's avenue, he is followed closely by several other knights. As they walk, the celebration's fireworks light up the entire night sky. With a serious face, he considers this a crucial moment to protect their saint. Nearby, the townspeople celebrate, watching the fireworks with great excitement. In a memory, he walks through a scene of bodies and widespread destruction. His vision shows residents living like cattle in a completely cursed village. He remembers a lord who committed terrible acts under the influence of the devil's power. Furthermore, famine and thieves spread as people struggled to survive the crisis. Watching the moon, he reflects on the miserable situation he witnessed before. It becomes clear that the insistence on the expedition is just a completely useless facade. Walking with his companion, he knows the real enemy is inside. Arriving at his destination, he stops in front of a huge wooden door. Very carefully, he opens the door and peeks at what is happening in the room. Sitting on the sofa, the Archbishop asks if he is finally there for their talk. Offering a cup, the Archbishop tells him to drink before the tea gets cold. According to his research, the Archbishop was a man faithful to the church, regardless of his lineage. Furthermore, he was a person who made numerous important contributions to the kingdom. He then questions what the Ma Xin sect has to do with all of this. As he drinks the tea, he wonders how much greed that man still has. Addressing the man, he says he knows exactly why he came to him. Suddenly, the Archbishop stands up and violently flips the table towards him. He reveals that Pharrell mentioned his name, but he managed to cover up the whole truth. Seeing his reflection in the drink, he asks if that was a confession of the crime. Just then, an assassin leaps from behind and lunges with a sword to attack the warrior. With a focused gaze, he prepares to react to the assassin's surprise attack. Extending his hand, he moves quickly to stop the sword's blow. He then easily manages to grab the assassin by the neck. Then he asks if they really thought a surprise attack like that would actually work. Suddenly looking up, he realizes something else is happening there. Not understanding what it is, he becomes confused about what is happening. He feels something similar to when he activated the blue flame and decides to kill them both. Desperate, the Archbishop yells at the guard and asks if he has forgotten the order. The guard apologizes and says he can kill them both without the sword. With his hand on his face, the Archbishop says he had no intention of provoking him. Holding the guard, he asks the Archbishop to calm down and listen to what he has to say. Remembering Changyom, he realizes what is really happening at that moment. Dismissing the guard, he says he will listen, but that he will treat him harshly. The Archbishop agrees and says that paladins have the authority of immediate judgment. He says that the Ma Xin sect is invading the country and causing trouble. Therefore, he secretly formed an investigation team to track their every move. Then he explains that they couldn't destroy them because there are spies within the empire. Looking to the side, he says that is the answer to the question. He then questions if the Archbishop acted as a double agent, but finds it suspicious. The Archbishop says he took advantage of the apostate and has proof for everything. The proof consists of a diary, the investigation team, and the identities of the apostates. Saying that everything can be manipulated, the Archbishop warns that if he is arrested, the expedition will continue. Seeing that he hasn't changed, he is surprised by the capable people in high positions. He says he will send the evidence and asks for a favor after he sees it. Pointing to a map, he says the sect is trying to command the warriors of a tomb. With a shocked expression, he realizes it can't be what he's thinking. In his vision, the worst catastrophe appears. A terrible monster known as a manticore. He remembers that in the game, everything begins after the monster is summoned. He expected the timeline to be moved up, but not by this much. Changing scenes, his master says there will be bloodshed and a great purge. Reading the documents, he sees detailed information about the priests who committed apostasy. He understands that Tegan is hiding his claws, waiting for a chance to act soon. With a smile, he says that talented people who can help are starting to appear now. His master then asks why he thinks the Archbishop handed over all the information. His master asks if he thinks the Archbishop handed everything over to prove his innocence. Running out of that place, he sets off on his next important mission on the journey. He denies it, saying that it sounds like a clear proposal for them to collaborate. Decisively, he says that if that's the case, then they need to go to that place. Riding through the desert, his companion shouts and calls him by the name of Lord Aiden. Arriving at their destination, he announces they have finally found the Jurial Inn they were looking for. Meanwhile, a man desperately yells for someone named Daryl to slow down. Inside, one man asks another if he forgot who was supposed to come there today. Telling them to be quiet, he says they will come for him, and not to worry about it. He then asks the girl to take care of everything until he returns from the sudden emergency. Leaving the place, he only thinks about the figure of the paladin who is about to arrive. Confirming there was no manipulation, he apologizes for his earlier rudeness. With the apology accepted, the Archbishop says he now trusts him even more. Showing the map of Gobendel, he asks him to stop the summoning at all costs. Appointing him as temporary leader, he demands total focus to interrupt the summoning ritual. Having a favor to ask, he approaches the Archbishop and explains the situation. For the mission, he says they need the gods' finest holy water. Reflecting on the plan, he knows they now finally have the exact location. As a precaution, the holy water will be used to deal with the monster's power. Returning to the desert, his companion shouts that he's found the Jurial Inn they were looking for. Surprised, he notes that even in this land of death, there's a functioning inn. Entering the establishment, he asks if their target is really on the 3rd floor. Going up the stairs, he accidentally kicks a liquor bottle in his path. Apologizing, the man on the floor asks who he is and what he's doing here. Just then, a girl appears, asking her brother what's happening downstairs. Recognizing the paladin, the man asks if he forgot about today's important visit. Asking for forgiveness, the man says he is a humble person and doesn't understand etiquette. Smelling the alcohol, he wonders why it's so disgusting to him. He then tells the man to brush his teeth, and he agrees to obey the order. The sister apologizes, saying her brother is very drunk and that she'll take care of him. After asking the girl's name, He asks Sane to stay in her room for a moment. His companion swears by the gods there will be no problem, but he doesn't seem to believe him. He then tells the girl not to worry, as he doesn't break sworn oaths. Alone with the man, he comments that he seems to be full of discontent. The man says he doesn't know his skills and trusts no rumors. Asking if he's a demon hunter, he compliments his survival skills. The hunter says that anyone who didn't know him was just a worthless rookie. Taking off his gloves, he prepares to show his true skills in a fight. He promises to obey whoever defeats him, and the warrior charges forward. The hunter says he diligently fawns over the strongest and advances to attack as well. With his blades, he tries to hit the warrior with a quick spinning strike. Dodging to the side, he manages to avoid the blow and prepares to counterattack. He then jumps back, creating distance to get a better view of his opponent. Landing on the ground, he realizes the demon hunter is quite fast and agile. The hunter says that at this speed, he won't even be able to touch his hair. Doing a flip in the air, he manages to dodge and throw one of his daggers. He seizes the chance and quickly knocks the demon hunter to the ground. Upside down, the hunter smiles, showing he hasn't been defeated in the fight yet. Using his chains, he traps the warrior and pulls him in with force. Surprised, the warrior wonders if that is actually a chi chain. From upstairs, his companion asks what all that noise is in the inn. Worried, he calls out for Daryl and the paladin who were fighting downstairs. Defeated on the ground, the hunter admits defeat and surrenders unconditionally to the warrior. He says that's why he doesn't believe in rumors, calling his opponent a warrior. He thinks the hunter's skills are decent, but his attitude is very annoying. Introducing himself formally, Daryl says he only works as hard as he gets paid. Reunited with the group, he explains that the squad was personally selected by the Archbishop. Father Vandel says he can decipher mysteries, and the Knight Sistina can use magic. The hunter questions the temperature difference, saying he misunderstood him completely. He then breaks the man's fingers, who screams in pain from the sudden attack. Clutching his hand, the man screams in pain and asks why he is acting this way. He wonders why he's reacting like this, finding the man strangely unpleasant. The hunter says he now has a teacher and asks him to guide him in the right direction. He then explains that he is versatile, skilled in tracking and close quarters combat. Speaking of himself, he says he is a vanguard paladin with sacred power. The group is surprised, commenting that his deeds might one day be recorded in the scriptures. Thanking them and ending the introduction, he turns to the girl watching him intently. The girl confirms she is a mage, and he discovers that she is Sane, Daryl's sister. Daryl says she is a high-ranking mage and that he's in for many surprises. He then wonders why he doesn't remember her, since she would have to be famous. Asking about the mentor, Daryl says he didn't reveal that information to them. With a smile, Daryl says the eccentric old man was nothing special to worry about. He then says that since the operation will involve individual battles, trust is important. He realizes it's hard to trust Daryl, as he seems to be hiding something. Furthermore, he smells a foul odor, as if a demon were right in front of him. With his eyes turning red, he turns and asks Daryl to follow him for a moment. Confused, Daryl asks why he's suddenly acting that way. Trying to explain, he says his words were just expressions, but he's cut off. Near the fireplace, he demands that Daryl tell him his mentor's name immediately. Attacking the man, he tells him not to answer the question he asked before. He finally understands the source of his discomfort, and says that 1 drop of holy water will be enough. With the holy water in hand, he forcefully pours it over the demon hunter. The man screams in pain, revealing himself to be a half-breed with black blood flowing through him. He questions how the man dares to pretend to be human right in front of him. With a malicious smile, he orders the mongrel to show his true, terrible form. Covering his mouth, the man asks why he isn't screaming in pain. Seeing the man on the ground, he notes that it's not ordinary holy water. Fallen and in agony, he can only whisper Sane's name. Lifting the man by the collar, he demands that he speak clearly. He then drags himself to the door, telling Lord Eden to open up immediately. Lord Eden questions the interruption, but the voice on the other side insists it's urgent. Stepping on the man, he reveals that Daryl and Sane are demon half-breeds. Changing scenes, the narration explains what happens midway through the game. An incident always occurs, where someone turns the church headquarters to ash. The one who caused all this was a powerful archmage named Kadak. There was only one reason he committed this atrocity. Driven solely by revenge, he had a deep reason for his hatred. His hatred stemmed from the church exploiting and then discarding his disciples. Back in the present, they explain they are protecting the siblings under the Archbishop's orders. He then explains that the Archbishop expected him to uncover everything during the mission. She then asks what suggestion he gave about their future. He explains the decision was left to him, to use them or to kill them. He then states he won't be involved in the decision after the mission is over. Lying on the floor, the man vows to turn the kingdom into a desert. Realizing the situation, he says he must be careful with unknown adversaries. He then shouts loudly, ordering them to bring Sane to him at once. Desperate, the man begs, saying that Lady Sane knows nothing. Grabbing the prisoner, he asks how he dares to interfere with his orders. One of the guards approaches and says that Sane doesn't know she's a half-breed. He continues, saying she has never shown any resistance to holy power. He then says that with Kadak it might be possible, but he doesn't understand about Daryl. Changing scenes, a young man excitedly recounts Lord Eden's battle. The warrior then speaks up, saying she dares to give her honest opinion. The girl remarks that they are closer to humans than to demons. Seeing this, the Lord simply comments that he sympathizes with the two siblings. Emphasizing his point, he says their blood is more human. Losing his patience, he declares the meeting is adjourned for now. After he leaves, the two approach the man on the floor. Arriving on the scene, the boy asks if Lord Eden has finished his conversation. They then walk through the room, not quite understanding what's happening. Noticing the heavy atmosphere, they ask what everyone was talking about. Trying to calm her, the young man says everything will be all right and tells her not to worry. The girl just watches the scene, seemingly processing the whole situation. In a memory from the past, a voice asks the master how to proceed. There, he carefully watched the two young siblings train. Seeing her power, he says she was born with that kind of ability. As her brother celebrates, the master says she has a natural talent for magic. Continuing the lesson, the master warns that their abilities are special. The boy then questions him, asking if the master has any abilities himself. Angered by the question, he strikes the boy for his defiance. As night falls, the sky becomes filled with stars under a large full moon. After resting for a bit, he feels his head is much clearer. Remembering the past, he focuses on the real reason behind the Kadak incident. He then recalls the Archbishop ordered him to use them, and then kill them if necessary. He was then ordered to handle the situation as he saw fit. Reflecting, he thinks about the knight and the priest, sympathizing with the siblings. To him, the whole situation seems completely contradictory, and makes no sense. He then gets closer, and watches the two of them sitting a short distance away. Telling the story, the young man says their master vanished and they were taken away. Listening to the whole account, he just keeps paying attention to every detail. In a flashback, the Archbishop warns that their parents committed great sins. He then explains their sin was too great and demanded punishment. The girl asks why, but her brother just says the master told them to. Holding the necklace, she speaks of a deal with a hero to save them. Seeing this, her brother stops her and tells her not to do it. With a smile, he stops her from continuing and asks what she was about to say. Remembering the past, he tells her it's all just a lie. He states that freedom gained by begging is just a simple illusion. Looking at the sky, he concludes that Daryl is right about their situation. Thinking about it, he says the church will never truly forgive them. Turning his gaze, he considers himself more of a hypocrite than anyone else. Remembering his power, he knows that even as a devotee, everything will end in a mess. He then questions whether he has the right to be disgusted by hypocrisy. Meanwhile, the girl says the necklace will free them from their cruel fate. Her brother explains that she would be like the hero their master mentioned. Looking up at the sky, she says she believes her brother is right. Suddenly, she looks down at the object she's holding in her hand. The necklace then begins to activate as she holds it tightly. Surprised, Sane asks why this is suddenly happening. Surprised, the boy shouts, asking if Sane and Daryl are really half-breeds. He just watches as the Lord confirms the information with a simple yes. Speechless, he tries to process the shocking revelation he just heard. As time passes, each of them deals with their own thoughts. When the day of the mission arrives, he points out the secret entrance. Asking for a moment, he tells the group to get ready before going in. Just then, the girl approaches and calls the paladin over for a quick chat. He then turns to hear what she has to say. She shows him an ancient artifact she had been keeping with her. Recognizing the object, he asks if it isn't the Pope's artifact. Thinking about the situation, he realizes the order is abandoning the two siblings. She then says that the artifact seems to recognize him as its true owner. Offering him the item, the girl pleads for him to accept it. She explains that the gem will respond to the hero who can free them. She then remembers her brother saying that freedom isn't won by begging. Handing him the necklace, she says it started to glow after she met him. Surprised, he asks if that really happened last night. Then he remembers when he was watching the two siblings from a distance. Thinking about it, he wonders if the object sensed his sympathy for them. He concludes that Daryl wouldn't hand over the necklace, but Sign is an innocent child. With her identity hidden, the item will now help guide him. He says that if they try, one day, God will forgive them for everything. Concluding she can't be saved, he reflects on her words. Making a decision, he prepares to act, but the girl is watching him. Looking at her, he promises he will definitely reward her for this. Getting everyone's attention, he shouts for the group to listen carefully. He then explains that the objective is to neutralize the summoning ritual's catalyst. Showing a map, he details the routes each of them must follow. Pointing to the ruins, he tells them they will meet at the rendezvous point. Finally, he reminds them that the target is behind the altar on the 3rd floor. Giving the signal, He says it's time to go. As they are being transported, he hopes they all return safely. Descending to the second floor, he walks alone through the tomb's corridors. Sensing the energy of the place, he complains about the unsettling atmosphere. Just then, two men surround him and ask where he's from. He just stares at them, not saying a word, saying there are only insects here. His mission was to free the souls. The ritual's purpose was to weaken the demon by removing all the sacrifices. Meanwhile, on the first floor, Yuan seems very worried about something. He wonders how he ended up here and who these strange people are. One of the guys approaches him and asks if the rookie is ready. Warning that this is not a game, he remembers the silent half-breed. Trying to calm down, he tells himself he won't run away anymore. Shouting at the group, he asks them to cooperate and avoid a pointless fight. One of them asks if they are demon hunters, but another gets annoyed. He then flies away, crossing the hall at high speed. Seeing this, the other men ask what their intention was. He then shouts to Daryl, telling him to use the smoke bomb. Agreeing with the plan, his partner gets ready to throw the device. Using his speed, his mission was to provide support for his partner. As the smoke spreads, the men wonder what's happening. Taking advantage of the cover, his mission was to advance and neutralize the targets. Grabbing his partner, he says he spotted the catalyst and will take care of everything. His task was to use holy water to destroy the catalysts around the area. Holding onto the chain, he says he was wrong about his partner. He then asks the young man if he knows how to jump from up there. He refuses the holy water, so the two of them decide to get out of there quickly. Arriving on the third floor, she warns that the summoning ritual is about to begin. Shocked by the sacrifices, his mission was to use the scroll to warn everyone. Protecting the group, the warrior tells him to go ahead with the plan. Reading the scroll, he prepares to activate the communication circle. Seeing the signal, one of them says they need to go join the other group. Arriving in a dark place, he realizes he's finally found the altar. Suddenly, he becomes alert, noticing something very strange nearby. He then walks down the corridor, sensing that the ritual has finally begun. Fallen to the ground, the final mission now rested on the girl. Sign. Summoning a barrier, her mission required everyone to attack together. Then the warrior yells at Sane, telling her now is the time to act. Faced with such a massive ritual, she says she can't do anything alone. Seeing her hesitation, the warrior charges forward to attack the approaching enemy. Everyone there looks in the same direction, shocked by what they see. Finally, the great demon appears amidst all the chaos and destruction. Shouting over the barrier, he says they all need the paladin's power now. Worried, she warns that the summoning will be over before he can get there. Just then, the paladin suddenly appears, assuring them that everything will be fine. For the summoning, the narration explains that two groups of sacrifices are needed. One of these groups would be used before, and the other right after the ritual. Having swapped the sacrifices, he also took care of destroying the catalysts. With the plan in motion, he needed to save the sacrifices for the summoning to fail. Then he gives the orders, telling Daryl to follow him and the others to provide cover. Without hesitation, all the group members agree to the plan and obey. Seeing the situation, the warrior warns that the barrier is still up. Even so, he warns that they can't retreat, and that the summoning isn't a problem. Giving new orders, he tells Sane to use her magic and help with the summoning. Shocked by the order, she yells that he's gone crazy for summoning a demon. Asking for her trust, he says he was chosen by the old master's necklace. Not knowing what to do, she just keeps looking at him after the order. Taking a step forward, he prepares for the great battle that is about to begin. Then he charges at the enemy as an attack is launched in his direction. Running together, the two advance side by side toward the approaching combat. Feeling the power, he says he doesn't know what to do about Daryl. He then thinks the boy's case is regrettable, but his emotions get in the way. Facing the danger, he warns that a single mistake is all it takes. With the woman's image in his mind, he remembers what he needs to do. To judge evil, he says it's necessary to remove all emotions. To free them both, he needs to take Daryl and come up with a justification. Even if it's just a justification for himself, he needs a reason. Seeing the demons approaching, he readies himself for the imminent combat. Shouting at the enemies, he unleashes all his power at once. With a single blow, he destroys several of the creatures attacking the group. Seeing the danger approaching, he shouts Daryl's name in desperation. Fallen, Daryl hears that he needs to prove his worth if he wants to live with Sane. Fighting the monsters, he wonders what will happen if he fails. Surrounded by daggers, he then thinks about what his true worth would be. Yelling that the paladin underestimated him, he charges forward using the blades as support. Frightened, the cultists wonder how the paladins managed to find that place. Elsewhere, they inform Sistine that their group has also been discovered. Shouting for the paladin, she says everything is all right and creates a protective barrier. Celebrating their success, the leader says the summoning will happen very soon. At that moment, a figure is quickly pulled into the summoning portal. Vowing to destroy the demon, he advances with his sword to end it all. With a single precise strike, he destroys the creature before the summoning is complete. Seeing his power, everyone there is impressed by the paladin's strength. Daryl then says that Yuan is reckless and needs to learn how to jump properly. He just watches the whole scene unfold with a very serious expression. Just then, the enemy leader laughs, saying the real summoning was a success. Preparing his sword, he gets into position to face the enormous red monster. Saying that was his line, he kneels, wounded, on the blood-soaked ground. Then he gets up and focuses his power into his sword to continue the fight. The enormous demon then roars furiously, shouting and cursing the human present. Shouting about the sacrifices, she prepares to protect all the children. Incompletely summoned, the monster asks where they hid its sacrifices. Knowing the sacrifices were hidden, he now just needs to defeat the monster. Seeing the creature rising, he yells to the paladin that it's flying into the sky. The demon then flies higher and higher, preparing its next deadly attack. The paladin then shouts for Daryl to grab onto the flying monster's leg. Saying he'll take care of the demon, he tells the others to flee with the children. Understanding the order, the group agrees and starts to leave the area quickly. Meanwhile, the demon releases a large amount of power and a gust of wind. Fighting against the wind, he struggles to stay firm on the ground. Seeing the situation, he yells for Daryl to use the chains to bind it there. Throwing the chains, Daryl obeys the command to help his companion. Chained to the monster, Daryl holds it tight as the paladin praises his work. Even wounded, he says he needs to sever the creature's spinal cord. Daryl then tells him to raise the blade higher, toward the spine. Announcing he'll count, he shouts the number 1 to start the attack. Continuing the count, he holds the chain tight and prepares for the push. With the move, he leaps and lands a powerful blow on the demon's back. Noticing the shallow cut, he complains that the attack was too weak and superficial. He then regrets not bringing the sacred sword because he was in disguise. Furious, the demon asks how such insignificant beings dare to do that to it. Back on the ground, he asks if they think they can just stand there. The monster then roars and promises to tear them both to pieces without mercy. Launching several attacks, the demon says it needs many sacrifices to live. Pointing into the distance, Daryl shouts a warning that the monster is heading for the city. They watch the demon fly away, searching for new sacrifices in the area. Shocked by the scene, he wonders if the demon is that intelligent. Seeing the situation, he says all hell will break loose in the city if they don't act. Watching the monster fly away, he says they have to stop it somehow. Seeing the city approach, he tells Daryl to cut off the monster's wings. Telling him to slow down, he orders them to crash on the outskirts. Trusting his partner, he says he'll find a way to kill the creature. Meanwhile in the city, the night in Serengal seemed quite peaceful. Then the townspeople look up at the sky, not understanding what's happening. Seeing a bright light, they wonder if it's a divine message. Realizing the imminent danger, a man yells for everyone to get out of the way. As the creature gets closer, they realize it's actually a demon. Panic spreads, and people run desperately, screaming for help. Then someone wonders what that bright light in the monster's mouth is. Called arrogant, the paladin then shouts his partner's name. Shouting back, he asks if his partner is ready to attack. Confirming he's ready, Daryl attacks the monster with several daggers at once. Saying he was a bit late, he reveals he needed to prepare the poison. He then throws his poisoned daggers, confirming the plan is in motion. Hit squarely by the daggers, the monster roars in pain and fury. With a great impact, the demon falls violently from the sky and hits the ground. It then disintegrates, raising a large cloud of dark dust at the site. The townspeople watch the scene, not quite understanding what just happened. Then the paladin emerges from the middle of the explosion, walking toward them. With one final strike, he finishes off what's left of the great demon. Holding his sword, he prepares to end the battle once and for all. Raising his weapon, he poses like a hero under the full moon. With a smile, he says the great battle was finally over. Elsewhere, the rest of the group is fighting several smaller monsters that have appeared. The warrior charges forward, cutting down the creatures with her sword in a spinning motion. Seeing more monsters approaching, she says the enemies seem endless. A group of demons advances towards her, ready for the next attack. Having escaped the tomb, they now face an endless horde of demons. Seeing his companion getting tired, he notices that the knight Sestine is slowing down. Seeing everyone exhausted, he wonders what he can do now. Suddenly, one of the warriors is hit and falls, screaming in desperation. Arriving to help, Lord Eden appears on his horse. Celebrating the arrival, the young man shouts that it's Lord Eden. As the battle rages on, the important thing is to fight until the end. Shouting to everyone, he orders the complete destruction of the demons. Charging forward with his horse, he yells to finish off all the enemies. Changing scenes, a man runs in to deliver an urgent message. Asking for a moment, the Archbishop gives the messenger permission to speak. He then informs them that Eden has defeated the powerful Manticore. Laughing at the situation, the Archbishop comments that his feat was incredible. After everything, he hears that the remaining cultists and demons were dealt with. Because of this, The judgment unit is going to arrest the criminals. Thinking about the situation, she wonders what to do about Lord Eden. Reflecting on his power, she questions the origin of his strength. Back at the camp, he thanks Lord Eden for his great help. Modestly, the young man says he hasn't done enough to be praised. Then he asks what happened to the children who were rescued. The warrior explains they had to prevent a greater evil and asks for forgiveness. Trying to comfort her, he says that she actually managed to save many lives. Taking the blame, he says the ultimate responsibility is all his. Reflecting on the weight of a life, he says he has no right to judge. Even so, he seems determined to move forward with his plan. Giving an order, he asks them to transfer the criminals when the Ascendant arrives. Saying he'll be back, he asks the rest of the group to take care of everything. Worried, the young man tells him not to worry about the two siblings. Respectfully, the warrior says it was an honor to work with him. Praising the group, he says they protected the weak and kept their oath. Asking about their plans, he learns they will hand over the criminals and then leave. Wishing him the best, they say they hope to meet again in the future. Riding through the night, the narration says the Manticore was finally defeated. Thinking about the future, he reflects that he must accept the choices he makes. He then takes full responsibility for the 6 lives that were lost. Continuing their journey, the group makes its way silently through the forest. Then the girl watches the paladin who rides ahead of them. Seeing his strength, she believes he is the hero her master spoke of. The paladin then looks back, asking about what she said earlier. Riding along, Daryl says the mission was well executed, but he doesn't understand the paladin. Remembering the past, he recalls how bad he felt for being of mixed blood. Looking at her brother, the girl asks if they should try to escape. Trying to cheer her up, Daryl makes a face, but the other young man tells him to stop. Without reacting to the joke, the young man keeps his serious expression. Then the paladin provokes him, and Daryl asks why he started a fight. Speaking of the order, he warns them what might happen when they get there. He then tells them directly that the 2 of them will definitely die. At this, the 2 are completely shocked by the terrible declaration they just heard. Begging for his sister, he pleads with the paladin to spare her life, but he promises he will help them both live as normal humans. In disbelief, he asks what it means to live like a normal human. He then questions the paladin's words, asking if they can trust the order. The paladin says they have proven their skills and that he owes them a favor. He then asks if that isn't reason enough to finally help them. Telling them to hide, he promises he will come back for them later. Shifting to the Empire, the scene shows the office of the great Archbishop Tegain. Arriving there, he reports that the mission was a success, but that he disobeyed orders. Depending on the reaction, he thinks he might need to change his own response. He then hopes the Archbishop has some insight into the situation. Commenting on the stories, the Archbishop says he lost prestige by forming the team. Faced with the complaint, he seems to give a very direct and sharp answer, but the Archbishop says the result is worth more and praises him for his good work. Thanking him for the words, he says it makes it easier to keep up the act peacefully. The Archbishop then asks about the siblings, and he says he will keep an eye on them. Surprised by the choice, he asks about the Inquisitor, but Eden says he can't go. Being honest, he extends his hand and says he will be sincere as well. Revealing his allegiance, he asks if Eden wants to join his cause. With a hand on his chest, he says his duty is to eradicate demons and apostates. Noticing his determination, the Archbishop comments that his talent is very desirable. He then touches Eden's shoulder, saying he respects his important choice. The Archbishop then mentions that the Saintess is looking for him for a talk. In a quick memory, he recalls only receiving the blessings and then leaving. In another memory, he remembers ignoring everything and putting it off. With a hand on his head, he says that finding her right now will be difficult. But the Archbishop informs him that she has arrived just in time, so there's no need to worry. Saying he has work to do, he leaves them alone so they can talk. Saying he's hard to find, she apologizes for her previous rudeness. She then comments that he seems uncomfortable with her presence there. Confirming her suspicion, he says he does feel uncomfortable with everything. Hearing his confirmation, she just stares at him in silence for a moment. Using her power, she says that what he said is the truth. She then realizes her power detects lies in all directions. Confused, she asks why he feels so uncomfortable around her. He then explains that the problem is the power of the mind's eye. He says it must be difficult, and she replies that she doesn't hate him. Not understanding, she asks what the real reason for his discomfort is. He then takes a step forward, saying he had something else to ask. Looking into his eyes, she asks if he worships the sun god. With his back to her, he says the question came sooner than he expected. With a clenched fist, He prepares to finally give his answer. He then says no, but that this is a necessary conversation to have now. Denying that he worships the god, he is then asked about spreading his teachings. She then realizes that the words he spoke that day were true. He confirms that the teachings about helping the weak are correct. She then points out the contradiction of denying the god while spreading his word. He asks if she's never believed in the teachings of other great people and philosophers. With his fist clenched, he says that doing good is a personal choice. She then questions if Vachiksar is nothing more than just another great philosopher. Nodding, he says she must think the same way the Order does. She says that all citizens of the Empire believe God is omnipotent. Pointing out the strangeness of it, he questions why the world is so full of pain. She then realizes that this man thinks the same way she does. Leaving the room, the Archbishop tells the Saintess that he is coming in. He then asks if their conversation was good and productive. Without a word, she just turns and says he left again. Walking across the bridge, he thinks that now she will be quiet for a while. It's explained that their conversation held an incredible and secret truth. A truth that he says is capable of shaking the entire powerful order. He then says he didn't want to deal with this, but that it's okay. In the original game, Uriel was devastated by the questions. He says the user's information can only be unlocked by Eden. The identity of the demon the cult was trying to summon was a huge secret. Just by trying to mention it, he feels his life would be in great danger. Since the game's flow is wrong, he needs to push it in the right direction. Just then, a man greets him, saying that Lord Eden is here. The man explains he was just passing by and found Yuan on the way. With a change in attitude, he apologizes for his earlier rudeness. Saying he's heading north, he mentions he'd like to hear the story. The man then explains that the north is the most dangerous place right now. Therefore, he needs someone to monitor the situation there closely. The narration explains that the north will turn into a hell if the beasts invade. In a hurry to get to the ruins, he remembers receiving an unexpected gift, a high-grade gem that traps heat through great magical power. In the frozen forest, Yuan ends up sneezing from the intense cold. He comments that the heat is bearable, but the cold is another story. Commenting on the snow, he says he finally understands what the Northerners meant. Pointing into the distance, he asks if Lord Eden sees that cabin. Recognizing the place, he confirms that it's the destination on Daryl's map. He then shouts in a panic, warning that someone is in front of the cabin, and they realize it's Daryl. Lying on the ground, he remains completely unconscious as the snow continues to fall. A mysterious man then appears and asks who they are and what they're doing there. Arriving at the scene, he asks if his lord was the one who injured the man. Just then, a mysterious warrior questions if they know the man on the ground. Seeing the situation, his companion tells Lord Eden they need to prepare. Confused by the response, the young assistant can only call out for his lord. Standing beside his horse, he formally introduces himself as Paladin Eden. The man then says that Daryl is fine, and that he was the one who sent him. At that moment, another man approaches, saying they were waiting for them all. Completely lost, the young assistant wonders what is happening. The scene changes, and the story continues inside a cabin in the snowy mountains. Sitting at a table, an old man comments on how quickly Eden achieved his accomplishments. Interrupting the conversation, the assistant asks who the person sitting with them is. Eden then reveals that the man is Gillen Fenrir, the Sword Saint. Wanting to understand, the young man asks why Daryl was on the ground earlier. To explain the situation, he points to his brother training outside in the snow. It's then said that this is his brother's daily training routine. Eden then says that Kadak ruined him, and questions what the mages are up to. He then comments that Gillen is just as he remembered, with heirs who make a name for themselves. But Gillen replies that they were just fools, not even considering themselves disciples. As an old friend of Kadak, he is the wall that protects the north. He shifts in his chair, indicating the conversation is about to change direction. Then, he states that they are not there to discuss such trivial matters. Staring intently, Gillen asks why he sent the brothers to his cabin. Getting straight to the point, Eden says he did it to save and hide them. When asked about letting them live, Eden says the answer lies in the nearby ruins. He explains that this is why he hid them there, and Gillen calls him bold. Analyzing the paladin, Gillen says he is unusual even without the necklace. He finishes by warning the paladin not to become complacent with everything. Far away, a group struggles to walk through a field of heavy snow. Complaining about the cold, he is warned to stay alert in this dangerous region. Telling them not to worry, he remembers that they left Yuan behind. With a mocking tone, he comments that Yuan must be freezing to death. Recalling the warning, the voice tells him not to become complacent with the situation. With a serious expression, he reflects on the words he just heard. He knows he is still weak and that the ruins will be anything but easy. Back to the conversation, he simply thanks his master for the valuable advice. Gillen then advises him to leave the servant, as he will surely die if he goes. But Eden replies that he will make the servant useful. Leaving the cabin, the group finally sets off on their journey through the dense snow. In a quick flashback, he says goodbye to the young man, telling him he'll be back soon. Then he concentrates while holding a small object in his hands. He reaffirms that he can't stop as he must keep growing to survive. After that, a blast of energy shoots from his hand and up into the sky. Meanwhile, the other group is warned about the region of perpetual snow. Worried, he asks about the gem, but is told the cold is worse. Caught by surprise, they must face a sudden and violent snowstorm. In the middle of the blizzard, he notices something rapidly approaching their group. Shouting, he warns that a beast is coming and tells Daryl to attack immediately. Throwing a dagger, he knows the hidden enemy's response will be instantaneous. Suddenly, several other blades appear and charge toward the first attack. Flying through the snow, the daggers head toward the creature hidden in the storm. Just then, his companion warns that one of the blades is heading for the Lord. He says the beast's weak spot is the nape of its neck as he prepares his strike. Spinning his body, he hurls his sword with all his might at the monster. Noticing his armor has been scratched, he understands the fight won't be easy. Then, Sane says the problem can be solved with the magic gem. She claims she will maintain the effect for as long as possible and activates the item. At that moment, a huge explosion of light illuminates the entire surrounding area. With their vision improved, the trio prepares to face the great threat. Gigantic paws emerge from the snow, and a voice says they are a trio. Revealing its form, the creature says there are two who smell bad and one paladin. Sensing the smell of a demon, he orders Daryl to focus entirely on the attack. Soaring through the air, Daryl descends with his sword to strike the great beast. Now that the Lord has drawn its attention, the other one prepares his move. Taking advantage of the distraction, he throws a series of daggers at the great beast. Hit squarely, the creature is wounded by the blades in its body. With a furious look, she screams that they are forcing her to act. Saying she will help, the beast advances and decides to take care of the paladin first. Seeing the scene, Daryl shouts toward his lord, who is under attack. Suddenly, a huge pillar of rock and ice erupts violently from the ground. With the attack, the paladin ends up trapped inside the large ice structure. Above him, the beast calls him a coward for hiding in his armor. Looking down at him, she promises to make him regret what he's done. Lying on the ground, the paladin stares up at the creature, completely powerless. Then, the beast repeats once more that she will make him regret everything. Lying on the ground, he just stares at the creature standing over him. Completely dominated, he is seen only as a silhouette on the ground. Mocking him, she asks if he finally understands the vast difference in their strength. Suddenly, her smile vanishes, as she notices something completely unexpected. To her utter surprise, she realizes her own hand has driven the dagger in. Not believing what happened, she says that this can't be real. With a new expression, he asks if she dares to speak the same nonsense now. Throwing her to the ground, he says she won't be using her mouth anymore. Pinned to the ground, she tries to say something before being completely overpowered. Looking at the daggers, he says the control only lasted for a single moment. Getting up furiously, she screams at him not to underestimate her with his tricks. With no time to react, he's hit dead on by a powerful attack. Suddenly, a new voice says it doesn't understand all this useless talk. Lying on the ground, the mysterious voice says it was all for nothing. The creature then realizes all of this just brings back bad memories. Shocked, she notices her tail has been cut off and asks when it happened. With his sword ready, he tells her to just give up the fight now. From a distance, his companions shout as he says that mercy is a luxury. Getting closer, he is startled to see the blood trails in the snow. They find the paladin standing next to the already defeated creature. Even though she's down, the beast notices their arrival and asks if they are all there. Tying up the creature, he tells them they arrived just in time and that everyone hates him. He warns that sympathy can be costly and attacks the creature mercilessly. Seeing all the blood, his companion is frightened, but he tells them to leave quickly. Insisting on the matter, he says the Lord Paladin needs to treat his wound. His companions then suggest they return to the cabin to treat their injuries, but he simply refuses, explaining to the group that he can heal quickly. Looking at the wound, they are impressed by the cut he sustained in the fight. Suddenly, the wound heals, and they say he is a chosen one. With a smile, he confirms this and says it's because of his high stats. Telling them to get a move on, he warns that the weather has warmed up and they need to be fast. She then asks if snow leopards aren't solitary creatures. Remaining serious, he continues to scan the surrounding area for threats. He explains that there are always exceptions, and that they are apex predators. It's also said that they are not a race that migrates during the winter. Looking up, he notices something different happening in the mountain sky. Pointing to the horizon, he says something very unusual is happening over there. Ignoring the situation, he says that for now, They should focus on the main mission. Hearing his words, the young woman keeps looking at the horizon ahead. At that, he approaches and places a hand on the young girl's head. She asks why, and he says that many people care about her. With a serious look, he asks her to always remember that, no matter what. Nodding, she just says yes in a quiet voice. Pointing out they're late, the group then decides to pick up the pace in the snow. Running through the mountains, one of the companions observes the strange sky above the group. Stopping suddenly, the paladin wonders what it is he's feeling. Far from them, two mysterious figures are seen atop a large cliff. He notices hail and wonders if he's not being too sensitive right now. His companion then points out that the hail seems to be falling only on the Lord Paladin. With a bleeding nose, he says that God doesn't have much to do with this. He calls him rude, but the paladin tells him to look around. Turning to the side, the companion is surprised to see the girl looking completely different. With her head down, she can only say that she feels disgusted by everything. Feeling disgusted with herself, she wonders how all this happened so suddenly. Remembering the creature, she recalls what was said about the trio. Holding a staff, she starts to wonder if her brother is okay. She then thinks about everything the snow leopard said about them. The memory of her parents, her master, and her sins comes to mind. A dark voice then warns that the two siblings will certainly die on this journey. She remembers the warning that they would both die upon reaching the feared order. Suddenly, a scaly hand begins to touch her own face. Frightened by it all, she remembers the sin that was committed in the past. The paladin then explains that she is awakening as they get closer to the ruins. He says she can break free from her destiny if she understands her true self. Cutting to a flashback, it's shown that Sign lost everything she knew. Her world seems to crumble as she faces the destruction around her. Seeing the scene, he stops her, saying the process has started because they are close. He yells that staying there is dangerous and they need to move, even if it means carrying her. Far away, the young assistant continues to watch the sky with great concern. With a serious face, he seems to have made a decision about what to do. Just then, two figures descend from the sky and land on the snow with an impact. Their sudden arrival causes a strong vibration that spreads through the area. Startled, he wonders if that vibration could be from a group of demigods. Telling them to ignore it, he orders everyone to run towards the light they see. He questions why the girl's seizure started so suddenly. In agony, the girl's skin begins to transform and show scales. Crying and screaming, the transformation continues to spread across her entire body. At the same time, a horde of snow leopards runs toward them. Suddenly, a mysterious figure's feet lift off the ground and begin to float. He wonders if there is something else there besides the snow leopards. Atop the cliff, a figure leaps from a giant sword. Charging against the horde, the mysterious figure attacks all the leopards at once. Sensing the presence, he notices the intimidating aura coming from the mysterious figure. Seeing the newcomer, he understands this is no ordinary guy to face. And so, the two figures face each other in the middle of the blizzard, ready for battle. Surrounded by a pack, the man faces the new opponent watching from a distance. He understands that a pack of leopards alone would be a huge problem, but dealing with the newcomer seems like it will be a tough task as well. Unsure what to do, he's told not to be so tense. The man says that now is not the time for them to fight. His companion asks if they should retreat, but he decides to observe a little longer. He tells the leopards it was a duel, and the demi-human lost. Explaining the situation, he warns that the paladin would take heavy damage in the fight. He then asks if the paladin is really going to waste his energy at a time like this. Lying on the ground, the defeated creature manages a mocking laugh. Telling him to consider himself lucky, he makes the entire pack retreat. Then he looks to the mountaintops, mentioning the unusual event taking place. Wanting to know more, he understands that for now, he has no choice but to leave. He says they need to choose practicality over useless and meaningless disputes. Ending the conversation, he warns that they need to prepare for the future. Saying his goodbyes, the man says they will see each other again very soon. Watching the group depart, his companion asks who in the world that guy was. He explains that there are several demi-human races living in the perpetual snows of this land. Each of them has different deities and beliefs, which is why they don't get along. But sometimes the Beast King emerges to unify them all by force. Once unified, the demi-humans wield a power that is truly dangerous to all. Seeing how things are, he says a war might start soon. He states that he can understand their hatred, but the timing isn't right. In his memories, the birth of the Beast King happens much later in the game. It was the ultimate evil, so difficult that many players quit at that point. His companion then asks if that guy was really the Beast King. Saying they need to enter the ruins, he prepares to open the great passage. With a single blow, he shatters the enormous wall of ice in front of him. Holding the item, he invokes his master Elohim Dirk with his divine power. He then orders the ruins to reveal the entrance so they can finally pass through. Blinded by the light, his companion shields his eyes from the emerging glow. Seeing the bridge of light form, he quickly advances across it alone. Reaching the top, he uses his sword to activate the Great Stone Gate. Then, he places the crystal key in the designated spot to open the passage. A magic circle then appears on the ground, starting the ritual to open the door. Suddenly, a powerful voice asks, "Who dares to defile this great palace?" They enter and arrive at the sanctuary of the great and ancient hero Arhan. Finally, inside, he warns his companion not to lower his guard in this place. Sitting on the throne, the hero asks if he is the one chosen by the necklace. He replies bluntly that his name is Eden, and that's all. Seeing his lack of manners, the hero says Arhan was more of a butcher. He gets straight to the point, saying he wants to pass the test and get the treasure. The hero then asks if he brought the girl along to gain sympathy. Confident, he says he will succeed, but the hero questions their motive. He then explains that he promised to give them a normal, human life. Hearing the answer, the hero understands the reason behind his actions. Then, he calls him bold and prepares to begin the great test. Inside a desolate arena, the two groups face each other from a great distance. Under a blood moon, various monstrous creatures begin to rise from the ground. Announcing the start, he warns that death within this test is permanent. Seeing the girl tied up, the hero says they must fight to survive. Facing the battlefield, the group prepares for the great challenge. Stopping his companion, he tells him not to get carried away by emotion. He warns that if they win, they will obtain the treasure that will change everyone's destiny. In a quick flashback, it's said that the gem revealed the treasure's information. Knowing this, he prepares to fight with everything he's got. Then, his body begins to undergo a very painful and dark transformation. Revealing his form, he becomes the Sentinel Demon Beast, known as Daryl. Seeing the transformation, the Seeker of Destruction reacts to the siblings' demonic blood. Thanking her, he says he managed to reduce the waiting time by 5 years. Amidst the chaos of battle, he fights as the girl screams in agony. With his stats increasing, he smiles and says it's time to pay his debt. Feeling the intent flow, he charges forward with even greater force against all the monsters. Moving quickly, he cuts down several enemies with a single, powerful, and precise blow. A gigantic creature then emerges from the shadows, trying to attack him with its huge maw. Continuing the massacre, he moves with agility, dodging the monster's attacks. From above, the hero carefully watches the bloody battle unfold. He leaps into the air and prepares a powerful attack against the enormous demonic creature. Impressed by the scene, the hero says he knew he was strong, but not this strong. He notices the blows getting faster and more precise, making him even stronger. Remembering when he was defenseless, he wonders where that guy came from. Recalling the past, he questions where a guy like that emerged from. He comments that the effect is good for monsters, greatly increasing their power. Turning to the creature, he praises it, saying it's doing very well. Wiping the blood from his face, he says it was about time it finally showed up. Surrounded by fallen enemies, he stands firm in the center of the battle arena. Landing with force, a mysterious figure finally arrives on the bloody battlefield. A flashback tells the story of the great hero Arhan, who always defeated demons. The story shows that demons captured his beloved in an attempt to subdue him, but because she was a half-demon, no one would help him in that great battle. Defeated, Arhan watched his beloved die tragically in his arms. Filled with resentment, he was eternally imprisoned by the demon known as Brittany. In the end, he followed the same tragic fate as his beloved. Meeting a miserable end, his power sealed space-time in exchange for his life. Because of this, it's revealed that all the demons on that battlefield are real. The hero then says that was just a taste and asks how much he can take. Tired of fighting the weak, he says his stats have increased significantly. He then summons Brittany, the demon of appetite, saying the fight is about to get interesting. On the other side of the arena, the girl seems to agree with what's happening. In her memories, she recalls always being the target of strange looks. Her brother seemed strange, but he told her not to worry about anything. Then she understands that everyone hated them because they were considered half-demons. Shouting, he asks if his sister Sign can hear him from a distance. Crying, she replies that he was right and that fate cannot be changed. He then yells that he was wrong and that she shouldn't believe that. To motivate her, he reminds her that Nari promised to give them a human life. Trying to bring her back, he screams for her to come to her senses. Hearing her brother, she lifts her head and faces him from where she is tied. From atop the creature, Eden says that Derek is very eloquent with his words. It's revealed that the demon Brittany is the final test for the two siblings. The ideal plan is for one to fight while the other destroys the altar that feeds it. Seeing the creature attack, he jumps to dodge the demon's enormous mouths. From a distance, the hero shouts Derek's name as the battle rages on in the arena. Preparing for the attack, he focuses for the next part of the fight. The creature asks if they will finally be free if they defeat that guy. With a smile, he confirms they will and prepares for his next move. Impatient, the creature asks how long he's just going to stand there confirming things. With a swing of his sword, he attacks and cuts off one of the creature's heads. After being cut, the demon regenerates and attacks again with its multiple mouths. He then comments that the feeling of cutting it is quite unpleasant. After being cut off, the monster's head regenerates and reappears. Seeing the regeneration, he says he tried to cut it with divine power, but it didn't work. Telling his companion to clear the area, he prepares to get Derek off the altar. The demonic creature then advances with its minions towards the paladin and the others. Shouting, he orders the giant creature to swallow him too in this great battle. He is then swallowed, explaining that getting trapped inside the monster's body is the plan. Once anchored, the demon's regenerative power will secure the hook even more firmly. To remove it, he explains that it will need to be pulled with force from the outside. Inside the monster, he prepares to sink his weapon into its flesh. Thinking about his strategy, he says that this weapon should be the most suitable. With a single strike, he drives the scythe into the monster's wall of flesh. Confirming the plan, he reports that the hook has been properly set. Shouting, he announces that he's now going to drag the monster away from the altar. A large explosion of light occurs, pushing back all the nearby creatures. From the inside, the rope tightens and pulls hard on the monster's flesh. Being thrown from side to side, he feels the impact of the immense force. On the outside, his friend helps by attacking the monster's main body. Still inside, he resists bravely as the plan continues to unfold. Gritting his teeth, he screams in pain while holding his weapon tight. The scythe's blade is shown buried deep in the creature's flesh. Regenerated, the monster opens its mouths and prepares to attack the paladin. Asking Derek to handle the altar, he says he will stop the monster. Running in his serpent form, Derek charges towards the large altar. With all his strength, he delivers a direct body blow to the altar's structure. Impacted by the blow, the altar finally begins to show some cracks on its surface. Then, a magic circle appears as the creature is surrounded by several swords. Being freed, the creature returns to its normal form after the ritual ends. Out of control, the monster's many mouths begin to scream in pure agony. Writhing, the monster's body slowly begins to fall apart completely. He announces it's the end for the monster and tells them to save the girl now. Meanwhile, the hero watches the two of them finish off the large, many-mouthed monster. Seeing the monster writhe, he prepares for the final attack of the fight. He realizes that without food, the monster has started to eat its own body. The monster's mouths then begin to devour each other in desperation. Witnessing the scene, he explains that it's a type of self-destruction for the creature. The hero observes the empty battlefield, not understanding what happened there. He's impressed that he identified all the monster's weaknesses at once. Holding his beloved, he says he thought he would fail again this time. Smiling, he says he's finally freeing himself from the curse of his hatred. Suddenly, he looks confused and surprised by something he saw. His companion then asks him to bring the treasure closer to them. Back at the cabin, the scene shows the snowy mountains outside. Fallen on the ground, the young assistant is once again defeated in his training. Seeing this, his master says he has a long way to go. Frustrated, he punches the ground, lamenting his great weakness. Suddenly, a voice says he's striving for nothing, surprising him. Looking towards the forest, he wonders if someone else was watching the training. Then he comes across a hooded figure and asks who he is. With a smile, the man introduces himself as Geomsion, Gilan's disciple. He offers to help and says he will personally show the young man a move. Training with his sword in the forest, the young man struggles to cut through logs. Just then, his master approaches, saying his sword skills have improved. He mentions he thought the boy had died when he found him lying in the snow. Stuttering a little, the young man tries to explain the situation to him. In a quick flashback, he tells him about a figure who taught him in a dream. Questioning his master, he discovers there are no other disciples nearby. He then becomes thoughtful, thinking it was all too vivid to be just a dream. Seeing his progress, the master announces he will increase the intensity of the training. Changing locations, a man arrives at the ruins of an ancient sanctuary. Inside, a priest announces he will remove the demon's blood from his body. He begins to explain that the sins of the ancestors are passed down. Interrupting the reading, he complains about the fate of future generations. He questions why everything has to be so complicated, if in the end, the sins are forgiven. Revealing the reason, he says that the other person's siblings are eligible. With a smile on his face, the man just listens to the priest's explanation. Inside a room, a man kneels and shouts about a rookie paladin. He continues his questioning, asking who they can entrust their lives to. Stating that they are paladins, He says the group will not leave them alone. Looking at the paper on the floor, he wonders if it's useless now. Back at the sanctuary, a man says that Nari is not a typical paladin. Surprised by the revelation, the priest shouts Derek's name. Handing over a document, he orders Derek to leave his blood mark. The young man then presses his finger firmly against the paper. The priest then turns, saying it's now Sane's turn. With a subtle smile, Sane just stares at the priest without saying a word. He then raises the book and says the ritual has finally come to an end. During the process, the two siblings begin to float in the air. Engulfed by the scriptures, Sane remains floating as the ritual takes place. Marks soon appear on both of their faces as they continue to receive the power. Once it's over, the priest stares at the two with a very fixed gaze. After the ritual ends, the two siblings stand motionless next to each other. He then looks at them both and says that God has officially forgiven them. As a witness, he states that he will prove their innocence to the church. Seeing the two crying, the paladin simply asks the reason for their reaction. The older brother then says that now he can understand everything that happened. He then wonders how he can ever repay all the kindness he has received. Grabbing the paladin, the young man gets emotional and starts talking to him. He then replies that it wasn't an order and that he's embarrassed. Touching the girl's head, he says it was a decision he had to make. He goes on to tell her that it's okay to make exceptions. Seeing the situation, the older brother calls out to his younger sister. Bowing deeply, the young man thanks the paladin for all his help. Asking him to stop, the paladin says the situation is uncomfortable. The young man then says he knows who he must repay this great favor to. Kneeling, he dedicates his life and his death to his new lord. Offering his sword, the young man asks the paladin to accept his oath. Thinking about what to do, the paladin reflects on not having expected this situation. Placing a hand on his, he tells the young man to leave everything to him. The young man then says that even if he admits it, the denomination won't accept it. He adds that it might seem inappropriate, but he has a lot of potential to grow. With a smile on his face, the paladin listens to him promise he will grow a lot. Thanking him for the opportunity, he hears the paladin tell him to work hard. Speaking to the girl, he tells her not to think of it as a debt. She then reveals that her master said she would become an archmage. Bowing, she says that she also wishes to follow the paladin and that it is her will. Seeing her talent, he thinks it would be a great help if they work together. Agreeing with the idea, the group starts to follow the paladin down the hall. Suddenly, a red-haired man appears and stops behind the paladin. He then asks what he's doing, since he himself failed. Saying the scroll was for someone else, he denies the current situation. Saying he wasn't just asking for water, he says they want the rest too. Annoyed with the situation, he yells that the task wasn't even his to begin with. Telling him to be happy, the paladin tells him to go see his beloved. Finding it all ridiculous, he questions how he could possibly be happy in this situation. He then accuses the paladin of never having truly been in love. With a smile, he says that the other must have felt what it's like to miss someone, but he warns that this feeling has turned to hatred and now corrodes his heart. Closing his eyes for a moment, the paladin just agrees with the statement. He then assumes the paladin must have his own problems too. Telling them to stop talking, he shows a small object in his hand. The object then transforms into a large weapon that begins to float. Holding the weapon, he says it's the artifact, Gargantua sword. Seeing the siblings' reaction, he says it's something too precious for him. With a smile, the paladin says the spear is good, but so is the chest. Then the chest finally opens, revealing its contents to all of them. Raising his hands, the paladin makes a golden object float in front of him. Saying that he's good, the red-haired man acknowledges his talent, revealing it to be a divine egg. He explains that a unicorn can be born from it. He then warns that the egg resonates with whoever passes the trial, and hatches soon after. According to Arhan, a unicorn or a celestial horse should usually emerge from it. Then the egg explodes, indicating there's a chance something different will be born. Moving to an open field, the group walks through a mountainous landscape. Back at the location, the master meets his disciple again and comments that he's returned. Noticing the company, he remarks that the young man is with a very strange crowd. Watching the group, he says he's lived a long time, but never thought he'd be this impressed. Then, the master approaches and asks what exactly happened in those ruins. Going back a few hours, the egg hatches, revealing a small unipeg. He then realizes that the strongest of the mythical beasts has finally appeared. It is explained that unicorns purify energy, while Pegasi can fly. Stroking the creature, he understands that a unipeg combines the strengths of both. With a smile, he realizes it purifies and flies without any restrictions. The man then questions him, asking if he was truly chosen by the gods. Just then, one of the young men approaches, saying he wants to touch the creature. Getting bitten, he is told that a fool should never touch the beast. An argument breaks out, and the two begin to exchange insults and taunts. Asking them both to stop, he turns to make another request. Looking directly at him, the paladin says he wants what he possesses. Realizing the situation, The man asks how much he really knows about it. He swears it's true, and is asked if he can swear on Vacheksa. Refusing the oath, he replies that he can't do that for him. Sensing the situation, the man says he seems to know something. He says the item is useless to him, but he can't hand it over. Raising his closed fist, the paladin prepares to show something in return. Opening his hand, he reveals an orb and asks not to be forgotten. Saying he's curious about its potential, he asks if that's all there is. Thanking him for the item, he promises he will never forget this great favor. Creating a portal, he turns his back and asks everyone to leave. He then tells the girl that she can become a great mage. Asking her to create a body, he promises to lend her his strength. The scene changes, showing a table with bread and stew. Eating at the table, the paladin says he had a good experience in the ruins. Around the table, the girl comments that Euron is still unconscious. Lying in bed, the young man grumbles about his grandfather being too hard on him. The master says he taught him more because of his strong determination. Interrupting the conversation, he tells the old man he has something urgent to report. He reports that they found snow leopards near the ruins, not far from there. Worried, the master asks if the leopards were driven out of their natural habitat. He says that a stronger entity has taken over the deeper areas of the region. Believing it to be the Beast King, he leaves the master completely shocked. He decides he will report everything separately to the Order of Knights. Asking the elder to be aware, he is told the warning has been understood. As the conversation ends, a heavy silence falls over the entire place. Everyone falls silent for a moment, feeling the heavy tension in the air. Suddenly, the Unipeg wakes up, catching the demon hunter's attention. With its eyes wide open, the mythical creature seems to be full of energy. Seeing this, the master comments that the little creature seems really energetic. The young man complains that his hand still hurts from the bite he got. Concerned about its diet, he explains that the creature eats demonic energy. Then Daryl opens his backpack, showing the remains he collected to sell. Watching the creature feed, he says that this is very useful for everyone. At this, the Unipeg gets annoyed and hits him in the face with its horn. Fallen on the table, the young man is told he's a fool for bringing that. The girl then asks if the paladin has already named the creature. Answering yes, he invites her to choose a name for the Unipeg. With a big smile, she suggests the name Yupe for the animal. She explains that the name means nobility, and also pure white in runic. With a smile on his face, the paladin repeats the name Yupe in a low voice. Stroking the creature, he says that from now on, its name is Yupe. Reading a map, the master says the information will be useful for Yupe. He reveals that there is a human farm in the region overrun by demons. Facing the paladin, he continues to explain the dangerous situation. He then suggests that the paladin go to the location to resolve it. With a smile, the paladin calls Yupe and says it's time to eat. The scene changes. They arrive in the northern region, in the state of Viscount Iceland. Running through the night, two panicked soldiers pray for the god's protection. Then, a chilling laugh echoes through the place, leaving them both terrified. Staring at the silhouettes, they wonder how they were found so quickly. A demon then approaches and mocks their terrible running skills. The creatures begin to discuss whether they should skin them in front of everyone. In complete desperation, the soldiers begin to beg for their lives. A voice says that humans hate pain, so they should be begging to die. Immediately after, both are brutally attacked by the demons. Suddenly, one of the demons is hit by an unexpected blow in the dark. Arriving on the scene, the paladin surprises the demons who watch him approach. Disgusted by the scene, he orders them to kill everyone there, leaving only one alive. Ready for battle, his companions prepare to follow the order. Euron then charges forward and uses his chain to restrain one of the enemies. The young disciple also attacks a demon, which screams from the impact. Seeing the situation worsen, the demon realizes it needs to escape. Grabbing the demon, he asks where it thinks it's going and repeats the line about pain. He then squeezes harder, making the demon react in great pain. While holding it, he wonders how demons feel about pain. With a smile on his face, he then tells the creature to experience pain as well. After the battle, the bodies of the demons lie scattered on the cold ground. In a brief flashback, he recalls a moment from his past. Asking the men, he confirms they are the watchmen who sought help. Turning to the demon, he orders it to tell him its master's name now. It replies that there's a taboo, refusing to reveal any information. Then one of the soldiers shouts out, revealing the leader's name is Bruni. The demon becomes enraged, yelling at the soldier who revealed the secret. Mocking the situation, the soldier shouts back, asking how it dares to do that. With an irritated look, the paladin tells the soldier to finally shut up. He then demands that the demon provide information about the Lord's castle. At that moment, the young disciple raises his hand, asking Sir Aidan to wait. He then offers to handle the interrogation, using an inquisitor's techniques. Surprised by this, the paladin stares at his disciple's innocent face. Giving his permission, he watches the boy call Daryl to join him. Grabbing the demon, He says he'll see what the nobleman can do. Dragging the prisoner, they move away to begin the interrogation elsewhere. He then turns to the soldier, asking if he found the pure blood. Confirming the suspicion, the soldier says he saw it almost every day in different forms. He explains that sometimes the creature would turn into a bat and fly over the area. Thinking about it, he finds it strange that a pure blood would cross the continent's barrier. Maybe it's not a pure blood, but a mutant demon with equivalent power. A demon that has fed on human blood for over 100 years. This dangerous creature can create minions and expand its power across the continent. He then gets angry at Tyrone, who didn't report the situation and just fled. Questioning the soldier, he discovers that dozens of vampires live under the Lord's command. The man says they capture, force villagers to breed, and feed on them. Revealing the reason for their escape, they say they were seeking the church's help. One of them even adds that a paladin visited them but was ultimately defeated. Telling them not to worry, the paladin replies that he's already aware of the situation. Shortly after, his companion approaches and says the job is done. Returning to the group, the disciple reports that the demon gave up all the information. Feeling sick from the scene, Daryl asks what they should do with the prisoner. Saying they no longer need it, the paladin eliminates the demon with a single strike. He then explains that they were once human, but chose to abandon their humanity. Because they have committed terrible sins, he says salvation is impossible for them. When asked by the paladin, the young man confirms he found a secret infiltration route. Praising the good work, the paladin says they can use the tunnel to get inside. With a smile, the disciple boasts that he learned his lesson very well. Saying it's his duty, the young man tells Daryl to be quiet after the taunt. Observing their interaction, the paladin realizes the two have become quite close. He then reveals his plan to block the escape routes with barriers. At that moment, Sane and his sister finally arrive at the location on horseback. Telling her they need her, the paladin says they will use her barriers in the mission. Readily agreeing, she listens as he says he'll explain the details on the way. Turning to the soldiers, he asks them to let him know when the Lord appears. Seeing Yuppie floating, the paladin smiles and says it followed him well. Petting Yuppie, he tells the creature it can eat as much as it wants. Arriving at Mouton Village, the group comes across the Viscount's estate. Forcing the humans to walk, a voice yells, telling them to move faster. At night, the Grand Estate's courtyard is completely empty. In the midst of despair, one of the prisoners asks if the gods have abandoned them. Moving through the shadows, the group finally manages to invade the large castle. Observing the prisoners, the disciple asks if their blood is being drained. Seeing the horrible scene, Sane says that all of this is completely unforgivable. With his blood boiling, the paladin announces that the infiltration operation begins. Running through the place, he asks to be informed the moment the leader appears. Reaching his destination, the paladin approaches a large wooden door. Opening the door carefully, the group can finally see what's inside. Inside, the prisoners are crying until a voice screams for everyone to be quiet. Yelling at the crowd, a man orders them to stand up for the head count. Observing the crowd, he comments that the leader doesn't seem to be there yet. Then a mysterious voice shouts, ordering one of the prisoners to step forward. Grabbing one of the female prisoners, the creature pulls her as she begs for her life. With a threatening look, it warns that people should obey when they are called. Then another guard kicks a man, yelling about how the prey dares to resist. Seeing the scene, the paladin thinks that the insolent brats need a beating to learn their lesson. Continuing the cruelty, one of the minions grabs a child who screams desperately. With his eyes fixed on the scene, the hero continues to watch all the movement. Thinking he needs to wait, he hears a guard question if there are more people there. Discussing the count, a guard says to subtract the fugitives, but the number increases. Deciding to count again, he asks one of them to move aside so he can check. They are then surprised, questioning if someone that big was there the whole time. Approaching the cloaked figure, the guard questions who he is and how he dares to stand there. Suddenly, everyone starts shouting, hailing the arrival of the long-awaited Lord Bruni. Then the Lord appears with a smile, making the paladin wonder if it's really him. Observing closely, he questions if that is truly the feared Lord Bruni. After the soldier confirms it, he runs, swearing he will tear the damn Lord to pieces. Yelling for the humans to get down, he orders Sane to raise the barrier. Then, a large barrier rises as the enemy's attack hits the ground. The Lord's attack explodes with immense force, destroying everything in its path. One of the minions is hit head-on, brutally torn in half. Other vampires are thrown back, screaming as the blast engulfs them. Seeing the chaos, the prisoners point toward the source of the attack. From the rubble, the paladin emerges, gripping his weapon tightly. Recognizing the weapon's light, the men shout that the paladin has finally arrived. One of the soldiers then yells, telling everyone to follow him. He guides the people, showing a safe escape route for all the prisoners. Furious, the Lord extends his hand toward the fleeing group. In a swift move, Daryl appears and cuts down another vampire without hesitation. He then warns them that the vampires can't cross the Great Hall's barrier. Pointing to the exit, He shouts for everyone to run as fast as they can. A man worries, recalling that the last paladin who visited them ran away. With conviction in his eyes, the soldier tells the man he has to trust him. More attacks erupt inside, as the two watch from the safety of the outside. Outside, the evacuated villagers fight the Lord's remaining minions. With a confident smile, the soldier says he's different from the last paladin. Covered in blood, the paladin proves to be much stronger than the Lord expected. Weapon in hand, he acknowledges the immense power of the Gargantua. He shouts to his companions, ordering them to protect Sane and eliminate the enemies. Ready for action, the two draw their daggers and charge into battle. Staring into the darkness, he challenges the mutant bastard to come out of hiding. Searching for the enemy, he demands that the Lord finally show himself and fight. Suddenly, a gigantic creature appears in the sky, flying in the moonlight. Enraged, the monster asks how he dares to destroy its cozy nest. Calling the paladin a worm, it roars for the human to prepare himself. It threatens to dissolve the paladin's body with its blood until nothing remains. Facing the creature, the paladin prepares for the final showdown with the Lord. Yelling about its rudeness, he charges forward to strike the monster with his weapon. In a powerful attack, he swings his weapon and lands a direct hit on the creature. As it hits the armor, the monster's blood begins to corrode the metal. Seeing the damage, he realizes his armor is melting on contact. The Lord begins to laugh, saying the paladin greatly underestimated him. Flying toward him, the creature prepares another direct attack. Using his weapon, the paladin blocks the monster's mid-air advance. He then tightens his grip, managing to push the creature away. Seizing the opportunity, he lands a powerful blow that sends the monster flying. With a swift move, the hero hurls the monster's body to the ground. The Lord screams in pain as he crashes hard onto the ground. The blow leaves him terribly wounded, nearly splitting him in half. Though injured, the monster rises from the ground, still resisting the attack. From a distance, his companions can only watch the dangerous battle unfold. Seeing the monster regenerate, he prepares to press the attack. Several mutants then appear, using hallucinations to try and trick the paladin in combat. Ignoring the copies, he stands his ground and finally defeats the real monster. At the end of the fight, the monster's body dissolves into a dark puddle. With his weapon on his back, he turns away. The battle finally won. With a smile, he says the trouble in the ruins was worth it. He then notices that the cleanup of the minions in the hall is almost finished. Fighting bravely, the young disciple proves to be stronger than expected, but he also notices the boy already looks exhausted from the fight. Wanting to test him, he tells Sane she can release the barrier now. With a smile, he notes that she spent a lot of energy on the demon barrier. Tired, she replies that she was just focused on keeping the barrier up. Worried about the others, she hears the paladin say he's just observing. A vampire charges forward, only to be quickly defeated by the young man. Shouting at the others, the vampire tells them to get out of his way. Facing his enemy, the disciple focuses on what's to come. Sword in hand, he prepares to show his true strength. Remembering his training, he hears his master's voice, telling him to push his aura to its limit. The master says he needs to feel the aura to understand it. Using all his power, the disciple defeats the vampires in a single blow. Watching the scene, the paladin is surprised by what he just witnessed. Fallen to the ground, the young man thinks he needs to push himself even harder in battle. With a smile, the paladin realizes Euron can now kill strong demons. Seeing the boy's potential, he's told that all the minions have been defeated. Celebrating the end of the fight, Daryl finishes off the last vampire in the hall. He then asks Yuppei to take care of the remains. His companions start cleaning their weapons, wiping away the enemy blood. Weapon in hand, the paladin braces for what's next. Suddenly, two red eyes appear, and he realizes it's the mutant's turn. Focused on the battle, the soldier says he's finally found its weak spot. A frightening mouth then appears, and he wonders if the Lord is still alive. Realizing it's a trap, he understands the Lord transferred his body to a minion. Annoyed, he realizes the Lord tricked him. Staring into the void, he focuses, trying to understand the Lord's new trap. Suddenly, he finds himself in a village completely engulfed in flames. Startled by the sight, he tries to understand what's happening around him. He then realizes it's an illusion created by the powerful mutant. In a moment of shock, he screams out Eden's name. A woman with fox ears turns and stares at him intently. Smiling at him, the woman asks, "Has it really been that long?" With a smile, the woman says she missed Eden dearly. She then touches his face and asks if his anger has subsided. Holding her hand, the paladin stares at her with a serious, firm gaze. He then grabs her by the neck, startling the woman with his reaction. Choking the woman, he threatens her, saying he'll make her wish for death. Suddenly, the illusion shatters, revealing the creature's true form. He then shouts, ordering Euron and Daryl to prepare for the interrogation. Tied to the cross, the minion screams as he's tortured by the two companions. Questioning the creature, he asks if it remembers the paladin who escaped. The creature refuses to answer, saying it won't talk. In a flashback, the Lord says he will grant him the strength he so desires. Offering his blood, he promises great power in exchange for servitude. Seeing the scene, the paladin finally says he understands the whole situation. He realizes the creature's fear isn't of pain, but of death itself. Surprised, the disciple hears that a vampire's power is linked to desires. He says that he saved his own life by stealing another vampire's body. Giving it one last chance, he promises to spare the creature's life if it cooperates. Saying the boy is wrong, he claims to have lived for eternity with no regrets. He then offers eternity and attacks the young man with a bone spike. Screaming in pain, the creature doesn't understand what the young man is telling it. He explains that the eternal life he offers is one of slavery. With a powerful strike, he crushes one of the creature's arms without hesitation. Threatening to crush its skull, he orders the creature to finally talk. Desperate, the minion begs him to swear he will save his life. Swearing in the name of Bachixar, he promises to save his life if he cooperates. In another flashback, the Lord says he gave the man a chance to choose. Realizing the strategy, he understands that the Lord uses desires to seduce. He then remembers that Tyrion received the blood of a vampire lord. In exchange for drinking his blood, he would become a member of his family. With a knife to his neck, he hears that this is the end of what he knows. The minion then becomes desperate, begging the paladin to free him. Promising to return the favor, he asks if his soul will truly be saved. Suddenly, he says he remembers an important piece of information. He reveals that he knows the location of the place the paladin is desperately searching for. Replying that it's not necessary, the paladin approaches with a cold gaze. The creature says it felt his emotions and that he greatly desired it. Turning his back, he tells his companions to take care of the problem quickly. Angry, the minion shouts that he swore on his god's name to save him. He then questions if the name of Bachixar is so easily taken. With a smile, the paladin asks if he isn't afraid of punishment. With a smile, the young man simply replies, asking what punishment is. As he leaves, he tells the minion to finally let go of his cape. After the interrogation, the vampires are burned by the villagers themselves. Watching everything turn to ash, they finally release their suppressed emotions. After calming down, everyone thanks the paladin for all his help. With a distant look, he remembers the benefactor who brought this disaster. In this place, the new village lord was the only remaining son. Questioning the paladin, the boy asks if he is qualified for the position. He is then told he must fulfill his duty, as he is the only one left. Supporting the decision, the paladin says the church will cooperate in the reconstruction. With tears in his eyes, the new lord gives thanks for all the support he has received. On behalf of everyone, he expresses his gratitude for the paladin's grace. The scene changes, and a seal is stamped on a document in the lord's office. Sitting at the desk, the paladin says the report is finally closed. He discovers that the imperial report contains important information about the king. The church's report clears Daryl and Sane of all charges. In the end, he bends down to pick up the last remaining letters. Elsewhere, a woman questions why God tolerates the world's suffering. Saying he thought she would say that, the man questions his own faith. The woman then explains that faith was created in the god Bachixar. He explains that there are other tribes who believe in a warrior god. Another group worships a great sage, causing accidents with divine power. The woman then asks if he also recognizes these beings as gods. She explains that religions are diverse, just like the gods they believe in. Because they believed in a perfect god, humans used their teeth to bite one another. With the majority believing in Bachixar, other religions become heretical. He says that people usually raise their voices when their faith is denied. He notices Uriel has a relieved look on her face, as if the problem was a difficult one. In a flashback, the woman wonders why God merely watches the world. She then questions why she received a sacred power and great authority. Saying he denies it all, he states that he hates the treatment of demi-humans as slaves. He then affirms that he acts solely according to his own will and principles. The man says he acts based on his beliefs, not in service to a god. She then praises him, saying he seems divine despite his sacrilege. With a curious look, she asks how he uses Bachixar's power. With a serious look, he says he cannot tell her about that. He then says it's time to resolve all the questions she has. Suddenly, Daryl enters, calling for Eden and asking if he's there. He reveals that a paladin has been identified on the outskirts of the large city. Meanwhile, the paladin rides through the snow, wondering if Tyrion drank the blood. Opening a vial, he suspects it might be the Tyrion that Rapali mentioned. Seeing the vial's contents, he prays it isn't true about Tyrion. Shouting for them to hurry, he asks Tyrion if he drank the blood. Just then, his partner warns that Eden is on his way, and the other confirms it. Searching the area, he figures it must be somewhere around here. When he looks toward the mountain, he spots the silhouette of a knight moving. Realizing who it is, he screams Tyrion's name out loud. Standing before him, the man just watches everything in silence for a moment. The scene changes to a man on the ground, praising his lord with a smile. He then says that maybe that's why it all seemed even more hateful to him. Back at the encounter, the paladin grabs the other, saying it was all bullshit. Leaping at him, the warrior attacks with his unsheathed sword, letting out a yell. After blocking the blow, he asks if Tyrion really drank the blood. With a fixed stare, the other simply asks if he's curious to know. He explains that his ability only activates when a demon is recognized. Wielding his weapon, he warns that suppressing the threat is the priority. With that, a powerful attack sends his opponent flying, who screams in pain. Seeing the color of the blood, he wonders if the other might be a vampire. He then falls back into the snow, his mouth bleeding heavily. Standing over the body, he simply calls out Tyrion's name. He then tells him to stop resisting and asks if he admits to the accusations. Looking up, he admits it's true that he committed a terrible sin. He accuses him of being a weak bastard who didn't know what to do, but he just asks which version the paladin wants him to tell. Affirming his position, he says he confessed his guilt but not his defeat. Even injured, he gets up, and the other doubts he can win like this. Continuing to speak, he says it's obvious the other is going to lose. He then says the other must think he's stupid, to which he gets a confirmation. Gripping his weapon tighter, he warns that the time wasting is over. He then lunges with a strike, warning that silence will result in execution. With nothing left to do, he just braces for the imminent attack. With that, he lets out a loud scream, facing the oncoming assault. With a swift motion, he brings his weapon down with all his might. The other paladin then parries the blow with an impressive spinning attack in midair. Seeing the counterattack, his face twists into an expression of total despair. The two blades then clash, creating a visible impact between them. Flying backward, he's thrown a great distance by the force of the blow he received. Looking at the fallen man, he coldly warns that the fight is over. After that, his attack hits the ground, kicking up snow with the impact. He walks toward his opponent, who is now down and defeated. Motionless on the ground, he acknowledges that the man's skills were unimaginable. Giving him one last chance, he asks what reason brought him here. Flashing back to a memory, he remembers desperately screaming to be saved. Surrounded by bodies, he begged for his life to be spared. Then, he recalls the voice that told him to remember his daily humiliation. A voice offered a bottle, telling him to drink to erase his defeat. Back in the present, he's struck by a blow and falls to the ground. Falling to his knees, he gasps on the ground, trying to catch his breath. In pain, he says he doesn't know if the other will believe his story. He explains he came back because he wanted to die as a paladin, not by drinking the blood. Believing in his honor, he promised himself he would fight the mutant. He reveals this was his plan even before arriving in this territory. Arriving at the place, he remembers people thanking him and asking for help. But with Eden's arrival, he realized everything had already been taken care of. The paladin then calls him irresponsible for coming alone just to die. With a smile, he admits he knew he'd hear that from his noble companion. He confesses that Eden, with all his achievements, was the kind of man he'd always admired. Saying he won't speak anymore, he reveals he left the evidence on his desk. He took the blood as evidence, even knowing it wouldn't wash away his sins. He then warns that the others will soon come after him, where the mutants are. The paladin then asks if it's true they thought it would be an easy task. Laughing, he says that in the end, he'd be killed by the others, not the mutants. He reflects that if it's all true, Tyrion was tempted and then seduced by the devil. Even in regret, he never forgot the salvation of his people, paying the price. At this, he questions if the man truly deserved to die for this. Knowing the execution unit has no pity, he thinks about the church. He then concludes that in the end, Tyrion would be killed without any chance of mercy. Thinking about human error, he questions if it's fair to kill someone who repents. He then spins around quickly, turning and throwing his weapon with a shout. He extends his hand forward, preparing to block some kind of attack. Flying through the air, his battle axe is thrown with incredible force. Suddenly a hand appears, managing to stop the axe in midair. Surprised, he didn't expect her to arrive so soon, blocking it with just one hand. A woman appears, saying she was eager to finally meet Sir Eden. With a smile, she announces she will greet him properly after she crushes the traitor. Annoyed, he wonders why it had to be her of all people to show up now. With a smile, she apologizes for her rudeness in front of the hero. But she warns that the traitor must be executed and leaps toward him. Seeing the attack coming, the man on the ground is completely paralyzed by fear. Eden then steps in front, and the woman stares at him in surprise. A quick block manages to stop the advance of her strike. Laughing out loud, she raises her weapon and continues her relentless advance. His hand clenches into a fist, preparing to intervene once and for all. He then rushes forward and shoves the woman with his arm, throwing her aside. Thrown back, she demands to know what Lord Eden is doing. He faces her with a serious gaze, showing he's not willing to back down. With his weapon in hand, he shouts loudly, ordering her to stop immediately. Confused, the fallen man wonders why he was saved from being killed. She then questions why he is defending the traitor, and he answers calmly. Changing scenes, she mentions a fight, talking about a scarf made from an enemy. He then states with certainty that Tyrone is not a follower of the evil god's cult. With a surprised look, she suggests that perhaps their sins are even greater. Saying he doesn't understand, he comments that all she wanted was to kill the traitor. She confronts him, questioning if he hadn't tried to execute the man himself earlier. Denying the accusation, he says he was only verifying Tyrone's crime against Sileron. She turns toward him, waiting to hear what he would say next. Seeing her companions arrive, she asks what he meant by that. Just then, one of them scolds her for rushing ahead, and she apologizes. Recognizing Bard Eden, the man asks him to tell the full story. In a flashback, he shows Tyrone facing an enemy he couldn't defeat. He explains that Tyrone was defeated without enough time to truly recover. Concluding the story, he says that's why the man desperately needed help. Outraged, the man asks if the traitor wanted to use them as mere tools. He says that finally someone understands, and that exploiting knights was wrong, but not a fatal offense. Asked if he has any evidence, he simply replies that he has no proof. He says that without proof, perhaps the paladin was deceived by the traitor. Calling for an investigation, Eden states that death is not the solution for this. Though reluctant, the man agrees with the decision since his lord insists. With a smile, he confirms that the man's execution is suspended for now. At that, the other paladin yells at Tyrone, blaming him for wasting his time. He warns that if he's guilty, he must pay, and if he feels remorse, he needs to pray. Looking at his savior, he begins to say that his lord is truly. With great sincerity, he turns and simply thanks him for the help he received. Laughing hard, the woman says it's finally time to kill the transformed ones. Suddenly, a voice announces that he has already defeated all the creatures for Lady Sileron. Asking about the bodies, she offers to help with the cleanup by turning them to dust. Another man explains that he has already burned everything, and she realizes it's not her day. Coming closer, she asks if he knew that each creature had a different flavor. Already on his horse, he says he can't take it anymore, and that they need to leave. Before they leave, a companion calls out, saying he has news for Lord Eden. He informs them that the campaign has been cancelled, and the detained troops will be released. Taking the opportunity, he introduces himself as Jude, a holy mage of the knights. Shaking his hand, Eden says it's a pleasure to finally meet him. With a slight smile, he comments that Tegan is doing a good job. Then, Jude mentions that he knows he is a special friend of the priest Geras. He then announces that Geras has become head of the council and assistant to the Grandmaster. Hearing the news, he becomes thoughtful for a moment, processing all the information. In a flashback, Tegan is shown appointing Geras to the new positions of power. Afterward, they agree to work together to solve the Empire's internal corruption. Smiling at the news, he says there's no more reason to worry. He then realizes he can send a message to Geras to solve Tyrone's problem. Meanwhile, one of the companions just watches the whole conversation in complete silence. Before leaving, Jude calls him over to share one last very important piece of news. He then reveals that the paladin is scheduled to receive a major promotion. Reading from a paper, a man lists his achievements, such as defeating a transformed being. A man says it can't be just luck, and that his promotion is a natural step. With a smile, he announces that the discussion is over, and he's about to leave. Looking out the window, he comments that Eden returned but has already left again. He then compares him to a storm that blows through every corner. Back in the north, he informs the man that he will be leaving early in the morning. He explains that he needs to leave the matter to the king, the empire, and the church. The man complains about getting all the work, but Eden wishes him good luck. Remembering the confrontation, he starts to think about what he felt when facing Sileron. He says he once felt the power of the sacred flame he received from Geras. The flame's activation happens when Beklasar's faith finally resonates with the user. He then wonders if the faith truly resonated with him at that moment. Without an answer, he admits to himself that he doesn't know the truth. Either way, he thinks that the characters differ depending on the path in the game. Clenching his fist, he understands that he just needs to practice that feeling he felt. Just then, the man calls out to him with a confused expression before he can leave. With a smile, he asks if they can have a duel before he leaves. Accepting the challenge, the man tells the boy to get ready for the fight. Charging forward, he says he wants to see the other's skills in combat. Then, The two weapons clash midway with a great impact. Changing scenes, a horse runs through a sunny, tree-filled forest. Approaching a river, he tells his companions that they have arrived. In a quick memory, a man and a little girl scream with happiness and excitement. Pointing to the horizon, he announces they have arrived at the coastal city of Arias. Questioning her lord, the girl asks how he uses Bakelasar's power, saying it's hard to explain. He promises he'll answer her questions soon. Arriving in the city, they watch the boats docked along the peaceful riverbank. Then, their companion explains that this place is the Holy Land for adventurers. Since it's the only entrance to the continent, it's natural for so many adventurers to be around. Not believing the story, she says it's a lie that nobody believes. Sipping his drink, Eden comments that he sometimes enjoys this kind of peaceful atmosphere. He then retorts, questioning her about her childhood and mentioning the blood he sees. Realizing what he said, he quickly apologizes and says he didn't mean it. After their talk, the girl asks if mermaids really eat human beings. Shocking the girl, he reveals that they actually eat each other. He then realizes he was too blunt and shattered the girl's innocence. Interrupting their conversation, a waiter announces that their mermaid dish has arrived. Presenting the food, the waiter explains how the dish was carefully prepared for them. The girl asks if he's going to eat it, but he says he wouldn't accept it. Revealing that mermaids are like them, he says the topic is forbidden. At that, the man grabs him, questioning if they are human. And he answers. With a determined look, he prepares himself, as the time to act has finally come. Riding alone, he leaves before Yahello can read his letter and arrive. In a flashback, he remembers there was someone he needed to find first. Saying he has work to do, he says goodbye and arranges to meet at a local inn. Arriving at the Adventurers Guild, he climbs the building's stairs with a purpose. As he comes down the stairs, he notices a figure watching him from the floor above. A woman calls out to him, asking if the paladin was looking for her there. Introducing herself as Yuna, she says she's happy to finally meet him in person. Curious, she asks why he was looking for her, and he asks her to come with him. He then corrects their destination, explaining it would be the bottom of the sea. Hearing the request, she just stares at him in silence for a moment. Sitting in front of him, she asks if this is some kind of paladin joke. With a weary sigh, he prepares to reveal what he truly knows. Despite her being a skilled adventurer, he knew there was a hidden truth. Mentioning the taboo, he asks again if she will take him to the sea. With a nervous laugh, she suggests they get something to eat and discuss the matter. He then asks if she knows any good restaurants in Arias with mermaid dishes. Seeing the woman's reaction, his companion realizes her identity is that of a revealed to be a mermaid. She wonders if he truly knows her identity. Deciding to flee, she leaps away from the table, trying to escape the situation. Extending a hand toward her, he says they don't need to resist each other. In a swift move, he grabs her hair, preventing her from escaping. Defeated instantly, she's in shock at being caught so quickly. Telling her to calm down, he says he has no intention of hurting her. After being let go, the two of them stand in silence for a brief moment. Stating that he needs to go to the sea, he asks if she will accept his request. Hearing the proposal again, she remains paralyzed and in a complete state of shock. He begins to explain that mermaids live in the underwater city of Atlantis. In an ancient war, the sea god was defeated and sealed by Bakelasar. After that event, a very strange transformation happened to the entire tribe. Then, their power deteriorated, turning them into monsters on dry land. With no memory of their history, many of them ended up being devoured by humans. But unlike the others, Yuna holds the full power of the ancient sea god. Replying that he knows everything, he says his plan aligns with hers. To free themselves, they need to visit the remains of Elpis, which imprisoned them. Within the relics lies the secret that can answer Yahello's questions. While clearing up her doubts, he reveals he will join her mission. Moving to the inn, he prepares to finally begin his plan. When his companions arrive, the man asks about Nari, who was there with them. Asking who the woman is, he asks Yuna to tell her story to everyone. Revealing it's easier, he explains that the taboo is broken with another person. She then questions if he didn't just pretend to know everything without knowing anything at all. Saying they have an important role, he asks her to tell them her identity and purpose. At that, she lowers her head and finally agrees to his request. Revealing her true form, she says she is from the mermaid tribe of Atlantis. Startled by the change, the girl asks what that thing on her arm was. Approaching her, the girl says her appearance is very beautiful, complimenting the color. Asking if the girl would like to touch, he tells Daryl to control himself and sit down. Watching the scene, he comments that Saiyan makes friends easily, even with Yofi. Announcing he's going to Atlantis with Yuna, he leaves Saiyan with Yofi for now. Worried, his companion asks if he planned on going to the city of Atlantis alone. Saying no, he reveals that they will actually go to Atlantis as a trio. Noticing the arrival, he announces that she's here and tells them to open the door. Commenting calmly, he says he figured she would arrive very soon. When he opens the door, the man is completely surprised by who he finds outside. Arriving on the scene, the young man says it's been a while, and he replies that the timing was perfect. Looking at the figure before him, he finally realizes it was Yahello who had arrived. Reading the letter, she wonders why Eden summoned her for 10 days. Just then, a messenger arrives, saying Lord Eden has something important to tell her. Saying it's hard to explain, he mentions that the Lord's words sounded like blasphemy. Arriving at the location, the young man comments that he had trouble finding his way there. Behind him, a figure stares him down, and he wonders why the man is so frightening. Startled, the man asks who the person is, and then says his preference is for men. Losing his patience, Eden just covers his face with his hand, unable to believe what he just heard. Immediately after, the man throws himself to his knees, his head bowed to the ground, begging for forgiveness for his rudeness. He says he will pay for his mistake with his own life. At this, Eden warns him that if it were any other saint, he would certainly be dead by now. Asking him to stand up, she says that if people were killed for that, no one would survive. She turns and asks if it's not true, and he awkwardly agrees. Thanking her for the journey, he asks what excuse she used to come. She replies that everyone thinks she went to a funeral, which is blasphemous. Approaching them, Yuna curiously asks what this so-called funeral is among them. He explains that the funeral lasts for a month and is a prayer ritual. He adds that it is forbidden to eat, sleep, or receive any kind of visitor. Hearing the explanation, the young man agrees that it does in fact seem quite useless. Telling him not to feel guilty, Eden says that he did well. He continues, stating that the belief in assuming divinity is a superstition. Leaving the girl thoughtful, he says that sacred power is not obtained that way. To begin, he reveals that he brought her there to show her the evidence. Beside him, she replies that he will definitely have to show her. He then reflects on how Ural began to doubt whether Beklasar was truly omnipotent. Suppressing her disbelief, she eventually had a horrible breakdown because of it. Before her heart is broken, he needs to act as quickly as possible. With determination, he declares he will personally destroy the strong belief she holds. Getting everyone's attention, Yuna tells them to continue the conversation they were having. The group then sits at the table and stares at her, waiting for what she will say. Looking at each of them, she prepares to continue with the main topic. Her face frozen in shock, she is paralyzed upon hearing the truth about everything. Desperate, she asks if Beklasar turned them into monsters and threw them into the sea. Just then, the scene shifts to two men talking at an outdoor cafe. Covering her mouth, she says it's not possible, refusing to believe it. Collapsing, she falls backward, and her companion desperately screams her name. Meanwhile, Eden and Yuna just watch the whole scene in complete silence. Looking at the sea at night, the companion asks Eden what they will do now. At this, he walks up to his side and asks how the saint is doing. He replies that she cried a lot, but after a while she calmed down. Worried about the future, he warns that the Empire will have a strong reaction to the truth, even though it's necessary. He worries about the unrest it will cause among the people. Changing scenes, the small winged animal sleeps peacefully on a wooden balcony. Back in the meeting room, he observes the group gathered around the table. Wanting to know if everyone has calmed down, he asks the young woman a question. Her companion then asks what happened to that paladin from the north, Lord Tyron. Smiling, he explains that Tyron was dismissed without a trial, and Xeras took care of everything. With everyone gathered, a woman announces that they were waiting together for the Lord's scriptures. After resting, he and his group immediately depart on a small boat. From the docks, their companions bid them farewell, wishing them a safe journey. Sailing on the open sea, the trio continues their journey under the starry night sky. As the boat moves forward, they press on, cutting through the dark ocean waters. Noticing the change, he comments to the young woman that she seems a bit calmer. She then confirms this, saying that the things she suspected have now become much clearer. Remembering what happened, he recalls that the saint then began to say something. Feeling a strong vibration, she asks Lord Eden what is happening. Unable to believe what's happening, everyone suddenly freezes completely. Realizing the danger, she screams that it's a surprise attack by a group of mermaids. Desperate, he asks how much time is left, and she warns that they need to go further. As the boat is thrown from side to side, they struggle to stay on their feet. Shouting over the chaos, he warns Jonah that the boat will sink if they keep this up. Shouting to everyone, she tells them that if they eat her scales, they will be able to breathe in the sea. With some hesitation, they bring the scales to their mouths and eat them. Just then, a giant tail emerges from the water, flipping the boat with its force. Seeing the struggle, he realizes he needs to protect the saint first. Giving a firm order, he tells everyone to jump on his signal. Desperate, she begs the paladin not to kill them, assuring him that she will drive them away. After agreeing, he hears Yuna thank him and promise she will resolve everything quickly. Starting a countdown, he shouts the number 1 as the boat is nearly sinking. Continuing to shout, he quickly reaches 2 and then 3. Giving the final order, he screams for them to jump and leaps towards the water. Jumping from the boat, the 3 of them fall into the sea together and disappear into the dark water. Underwater, he continues to sink as air bubbles rise to the surface. Sinking deeper and deeper, he says that Atlantis must wait for his arrival. Surprised by the situation, Yuna remarks that it's amazing to be able to breathe underwater. Just then, the saint's body begins to change, and she screams, amazed by the transformation. Noticing her new tail, she says in shock that she has turned into a mermaid. Suddenly, several sea creatures appear, surrounding the new mermaid on the ocean floor. Opening its enormous mouth, one of the monsters lunges forward to attack the young woman without hesitation. Seeing the imminent attack, she freezes, completely paralyzed with fear before the creature. With a swift blow, Eden strikes the creature, stopping it from attacking the saint. Holding the defeated monster, he asks if she's okay, and she confirms that she is. Seeing one was still left, Yuna asks the paladin to come closer to her. Below them, a large group of mermaids swims calmly through the dark ocean waters. Finding their calmness strange, he's told the reason is Jonah's presence. Revealing the truth, he explains that they are related and can feel the sea god's energy. Annoyed with the creatures, he questions how they dare to suddenly block his path. Shouting at the group, one of them tells everyone to get out of there if they want to live. Immediately after, all the creatures back away and disappear into the darkness of the ocean. Saying the suppression worked, she thanks him for waiting and points the way forward. The group then continues to swim, passing through an area full of algae and sea plants. Feeling the water pressure, he notices the current has gotten much stronger there. Uriel then starts to look very tired, likely due to her recent lack of physical activity. Seeing her struggle, he approaches and tells her he's there to help her along the way. After getting closer, he takes her hand firmly to guide her through the current. Telling her to relax, he says she just needs to follow him, and she agrees to try. Even though she finds it a bit difficult, she tries her best to keep up with the paladin's pace. She then wonders if it's possible to swim so strangely in the depths. Saying it's not possible, he reminds her they are in a place guided by faith. As he leads her, she keeps thinking about everything happening around her. Reflecting on the journey, she concludes that Sir Eden is indeed a very strange man. Finally arriving at the submerged city of Atlantis, the group observes the landscape ahead. He then calls out to the saint, who turns to answer him immediately. Without a word, he then lets go of her hand, leaving her to go on her own. Startled by the sudden gesture, she apologizes for holding on to him. Saying it wasn't intentional, she asks the holy woman to come quickly. Once on dry land, he explains that Jonah's abilities are unlocked by the air. Suddenly, a guard appears, asking loudly who they were and what they were doing. With a quick strike, he hits the guard squarely, who passes out instantly. Holding the unconscious man, he tells her not to worry, that he won't kill him. He warns Jonah that if the barrier breaks, all the residents will turn into monsters, but he says the curse will save them, promising to lift both the barrier and the curse. Giving an order, he tells Jonah to take the residents to the surface as planned. She says the team will be waiting, assuring him she will minimize all damage. He then warns that not everyone will survive if they leave things as they are. Thinking about the situation, he realizes it's a very familiar dilemma for him. Under the weak pretext of saving the future, he continues to reflect on his choices. His heart feeling tight and frustrated, he clenches his fist with great force. Walking toward the saint, he prepares to continue the plan they started. Arriving at the temple of the sea god, she announces they've reached their destination. Saying goodbye to them both, she says she hopes to see them on dry land again soon. Seeing the enormous statue of the goddess, the saint comments on its imposing presence. Looking up, he states that it was Shaylin who started all of this. Without further hesitation, he just turns to the woman and tells her it's time to go. Standing before a door, he explains that inside lies the key to the saint's doubts. Then, the large doors open slowly, revealing what was on the other side. Entering the temple, the two walk together toward the enormous statue of the goddess. Clenching his fist, he remarks that he can finally use what he received. He then reveals the authority he received from Arhan as the great god's representative. As the divine representative, he calls Shaylin's name, holding the power in his hand. Announcing the forgiveness of her sins, the statue shatters from the item's power. With the statue's destruction, the entire place begins to shake and crumble. Outside, the protective barrier shatters into countless pieces all at once. Seeing the broken barrier, Yuna screams in desperation as water begins to flood in. Before the city is sealed, he says he has something to tell the woman. Saying he didn't need to bring her, he reveals the goal wasn't just to save her. He then explains that they actually need both eyes of the powerful saint. In a direct request, he says he brought her here to obtain her mind's eye. Shocked, she asks him to be clear, wanting to know if she heard the request correctly. Asking if she doesn't know the meaning, he questions if she'll check the sea. Realizing the truth, she says it's not a lie, and that he has committed blasphemy. A voice then says, it's certain the mortal knows the reason for all of this. With its eyes glowing, The statue asks if it was Beklasar who sent him there. He denies it, saying he came of his own free will, and the statue questions the pardon. Just then, the statue's face appears, saying that the curse has not yet been lifted. Angrily, the statue asks if he is trying to lead the children of the sea to their deaths. She screams that even if the water comes in, the monsters will still form. He shouts back, saying he knows they're pagans who serve her. He states that his sect does not forgive paganism and explains the fate of the faithful, but he reveals he has a talisman that can forgive them without fail. He explains that Jonah, his only agent, was also searching for it in the Empire. The statue then questions if he thinks the great emperor would forgive him. At that moment, the talisman's power begins to be released, and the woman screams. Losing her breath, she begs him to hold on, and he speaks of his lord. She asks if his lord asked him to do this, and he says he doesn't know. With a threatening look, he warns that if the woman beside him dies, with his eyes glowing, he states with certainty that he will annihilate her people. The statue then just stares at him in silence for a brief moment of hesitation. Confident, he warns that he won't die, as he has a well-prepared plan. After that, the statue's eyes glow, and she just watches him in silence. Without backing down, she says he is no ordinary being, and that he didn't flinch. Assuming his truths are useless, she says she comes from a school of thought. Calling him an arrogant child, she says he will never break her will with that. Saying their sins have not been forgiven, she tells them not to trust her at all. Then a great blast of energy hits the three of them, throwing them back. In the midst of the explosion, a voice accuses him of being the one true problem. Having received a false title, his truth was completely buried because of it. Clenching his fist tightly, he prepares to deny the other's death. Warning that this is their only chance, he asks everyone to be very careful. Receiving the title of Liberator of Atlantis, he faces the statue before him. With the flow of the water, they continue on their way to their final destination. She asks where they're going, and he replies they're headed to the great hero's ruins. She comments that the villagers turned into mermaids, but they are safe thanks to Jonah's power. Saying she has no other choice, she states that she must move forward with the plan. Mentioning that Guyong asked for the divine eye, he asks if that's even possible. With a downward glance, he just confirms that yes, it was indeed possible to do. Believing he treated her with sincerity, she feels used by him. Saying he wasn't sure if she would come, he adds that there's another reason. He then reminds her of his promise to tell her the truth about the gods. Offering to help, she says that if he asks, she can simply hand over the power. Refusing the offer, he asks her to understand that it's not for personal gain. Saying she doesn't need to answer immediately, he tells her she has time. He continues, saying she can decide after the evidence is clear. Then, the two continue swimming together towards their final destination in the sea. Thinking about his gains, he reflects that even if she refuses, it's still a victory. He believes it will be easier to manipulate the plot with her divine eye. Saying the decision is hers, he lets her think about the important matter. Arriving at the hero's ruins, the two observe the ancient structure before them. Seeing the barrier that not even water can penetrate, he says they can enter with their powers. As they pass through the barrier, the two are shocked by the scene they find. Bound by chains, a skeletal body is trapped in the center of the hero's ruins. Looking down at the two below, the chained being observes them, calling them demons. Calling her closer, he asks her to come with him for now so they can move forward. Asking for a moment, he apologizes and pauses for an instant before they continue. Completely paralyzed by fear, she says she can't move her body properly. Then, a hand takes hers firmly, trying to reassure her. Seeing her difficulty in moving, he offers to help her along the way. He then asks if she's doing it on purpose and tells her to calm down. Closing her eyes, she finally says she understands and will begin the task. After that, the two approach the large stone slab on the platform together. Using her powers, her eyes glow as she deciphers the ancient inscription. Then the text on the stone begins to glow, revealing its contents to them. Shocked by the identity, she turns and asks if it was all true. Confirming the story, he says the being was praised and obeyed his god's orders. But he explains that the being fell from grace, becoming the original demon there. It is then revealed that Elpis was the one who proved his god was not omnipotent. Reading the stone, they discover that Elpis threw the entire tribe into the sea. Unable to overcome the guilt, he succumbed to a corruption that feeds on emotions. In the process, he even tore out his own eyes and ears, but the guilt remained. So he decided that to end the guilt, the tribe needed to disappear. Becoming a demon, his purpose was to kill the entire tribe so he would not be tormented. That is why Elpis sealed himself there, with what little sanity he had left. Faced with the situation, he says that she now has a very important choice to make. She could either awaken the demon, or simply turn her back and walk away. Looking at the demon, he says that of course he already knew what to do. With a smile, he reveals that he is thinking of finally waking that demon up. From the ruins of great heroes, ancient records are sometimes discovered, but claiming one of these items isn't simple. It requires a test of worth. To succeed, the condition is to defeat the fallen hero. Elpis himself. Warning her of the risk, he asks what happens if they fail. She then asks what if they fail, miming a tragedy with her hands. Continuing her argument, she says that using lives as collateral isn't right. Although he agrees, he prepares to give her an important reason. In an old story, it was said that Bachexar cast Elpis into Atlantis. He then explains that the chains will one day break, as they are not eternal. Facing the danger, he warns that they will risk everything for a chance to win. Having made up his mind, he simply walks forward toward his destiny. Staring intently, he declares this to be a conquest from the trials of Arhan. He then affirms that he will believe in the path his master is treading. Kneeling on the ground, the woman begins a prayer directed to Saint Bachexar. She says his sword cries out for annihilation to illuminate the night. She asks for an answer, saying that darkness is falling and judgment will be rendered. Impressed by the power, he recognizes that this is indeed Uriel. He then says her power is unimaginable and too much for him to control. Propelled forward, he leaps toward his opponent. Soaring through the air, he dives toward the creature chained to the ground. With his sword in hand, he descends with all his might for the strike. The blade then strikes the immobilized creature dead on. Taking the hit, the monster just opens its mouth and lets out a scream. Holding the woman, he shouts that he'll take her somewhere safe. Leaping away from the danger, he places her on an elevated platform. Once she's safe, he worriedly asks if she's okay, and hears a yes. Suddenly, a great energy explodes from where the monster was. He then explains that Elpis's seal has been broken, and he's about to move. Warning that he's going down to fight, he prepares for combat. Transformed, the monster reemerges much larger, as she watches from a distance. Looking back, he shouts in a panic to warn the Saintess of the danger. Unfortunately, it was too late, as the monster's claws were lunging toward her. Taking the hit for her, he protects her as she calls out his name. Despite the severe wound, he holds his ground and endures the impact of the blow. Now, on the ground, the woman screams his name as the monster licks the blood. With his last bit of strength, he begs for healing, and she desperately agrees. He then stomps his foot on the ground, preparing to push the creature back. At that, she begins the healing process, while the monster watches closely. He asks her to provide support from a distance, but she worries about his injuries. Saying he's fine, he asks for her support to deal with the creature. With the enemy's blood on him, he stands firm to continue the long battle. Turning its face toward him, the monster stares him down before attacking. Leaping at the enemy, he lands a powerful blow right in its chest. Immediately after, a devastating strike hits and sinks into the opponent's body. Feeling the impact of the blow, the monster is thrown back and lets out a cry. Knocked back by the attack, he is thrown far away by the impact. Regaining his balance, he creates a spear and prepares to counterattack. Using the new weapon, he charges forward and blocks the powerful enemy's blow. Feeling the force, he is stunned by the incredible speed of the monster's attack. Then, the creature's claw descends on him relentlessly. Despite trying to defend himself, he ends up being hit head-on by the blow. Spitting blood, he feels the pain of the attack he just took. Thrown violently, his body slams against the ground. Splattered across the scene, his blood stains the area all over. Still standing, he slowly gets up after being thrown. The monster then says that even for a saint, that thing tears like paper. With just one hand, it crushes the piece of armor with no difficulty. He then shouts that he's okay and asks her to continue her support. Understanding the situation, she says yes and focuses on helping him. On the other side, the monster's wounds begin to regenerate rapidly. He warns that they need to finish it off before it fully recovers. With a roar, the creature charges to attack as he prepares himself. Throwing his weapon, he attacks the smaller creatures leaping toward him. He then uses his sword to cut down the enemies while dodging their blows. Hit by an attack, he feels the impact and groans in pain. Dodging the monster, he yells that the time to strike is now. He then asks the Saintess to give him her blessing for the final blow. In response to his request, she raises her arms and begins to chant. At that, a pillar of energy descends from the heavens directly upon him. Imbued with power, he now wields a spear of pure energy. Gripping the weapon tightly, he declares that the time has finally come. Recognizing its strength, he says, "This is the power of Saint Uriel." With a single motion, he attacks, destroying several enemies at once. He then transforms the energy into a whip for his attack. Stomping his foot hard, he prepares to unleash its full power. The ground shatters from the impact, creating a massive crater. Tearing the monster apart, the blow cuts down every enemy in its path. Its body gone, the creature's head finally crashes to the ground, destroyed. Then, what's left of the enemy explodes in a huge ball of energy. Alone on the scene, he observes the outcome of the devastating battle he fought. Seeing his hand dissolving, he notes that the enemy turned completely to dust. He then comments that the power was far greater than he had imagined. Suddenly, he feels a sharp pain and a shock coursing through his body. Leaning on his weapon, he groans from the pain he's feeling. He wonders if his body is recoiling from the power Uriel gave him. Saying that Elpis isn't dead, he warns that only the first phase is over. A large vortex forms, signaling that if he falls, it's all over. He grumbles that if he had known about the backlash, he would have used the blessing in the second phase. In the center of the area, dark energy continues to gather. Seeing this, the saint shouts Lord Eden's name from afar. Suddenly, he looks down, noticing something approaching him. Looking down, he sees the saint and asks what she's doing there. He asks if she jumped to heal him, realizing her legs are broken. He remarks that she's confirming her life or death stance quite aggressively. Explaining she was shocked by the backlash, she asks if the battle isn't over yet. With his eyes closed, he confirms that she's right about the situation. He then asks her to give the blessing again when he gives the signal. Refusing, she says there's no way she'll do what he asked. She warns that it was dangerous, and next time he could actually die. Saying that now is the time to suggest an exchange, he prepares himself. Holding the staff of energy, he turns to his battle companion. An intense light filled with symbols then manifests, filling the entire area. Asking her to excuse him for a moment, he holds her and takes her with him. Arriving at the location, he places her in front of a large stone tablet. He then asks her to read the tablet about the consensual power exchange. Looking at the tablet, he says, "This is the secret hidden in the ruins." She says she knew he wouldn't ask for something extreme. He confirms that he is, after all, human. He reveals he received the power to revive the dead from the sea god. She asks if he wants her to exchange her power to save him later. Admitting it's an irrational request, he warns that in the end, she will lose everything. But he warns that it will be difficult to defeat the enemy that is about to awaken. High above, the enemy's shadowy form finally begins to manifest. She then reminds him that he had said their chances of winning were good. Taking the blame, he warns that their tribe will be annihilated if they fail. She says that if this was all intentional, he used lives as hostages to threaten her. Looking away, he simply states there's no time for this discussion. Next, she asks if everything he did was just to gain people's respect. Closing his eyes for a moment, he finally agrees that she's right. She also closes her eyes, seemingly having reached an important conclusion about him. Saying that's a lie, he reminds her he's a human being just like her. With a smile, she asks him not to make that joke again, and calls out to him. Being the only person she can't read, he continues to surprise her. In a memory, she recalls him saying he lies as easily as he breathes. She also remembers that sometimes he seems to see people as mere tools. Despite everything, she sees him as someone who always creates a good ending. Accepting the proposal, she asks him to make just one promise to her. She then asks him to never use the power of resurrection directly on her. Agreeing to her request, he touches her head and begins the exchange process. Feeling the power leave her, she feels regretful, yet somehow renewed. She says the mind's eye taught her many lessons, but it also left scars. Because she could see the other side of people, she believed he had no feelings. But realizing that's not the case, she still finds herself disappointed and building expectations. With a smile, she says that now she will find out what's in his heart. She then states that she will see the world through her lord's eyes from now on. With his eyes glowing, he swears he will definitely make good use of the power. Back in the battle, the enemy re-emerges with his sword, preparing to attack. He warns her that this is a gamble with her life, so she shouldn't relax. Facing the enemy, he recognizes him as the paladin, Elphys Bellerhard. The paladin then charges forward, shouting that he will finish the task that was left undone.